And you think that's the world record typical?
I got every measurement by the end of the conversation.
Yeah, so you could do the math.
And the deer's well over 220 net.
Can you tell us the state of that one?
I'm not. I'm not.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there to help some metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 206, as Nick continues to keep us in line. And he informed us, you're listening to this, it's October 1st or later.
And you know what it is too? We haven't been in studio for a few weeks first, and also had.
Is that why your ears are just
they were ringing,
acclimating,
or doing whatever? Plus the afternoon coffee. Plus I've been fasting, so not intentionally. I just
that could be
forgot to eat.
Could be it.
Lightheadedness.
No, I feel good. I feel ready.
A little ground deer with some better backstrap taco seasoning on it.
Nice.
And a little taco salad type stuff.
Oh, for lunch you did?
Yeah. Spot on.
Dad sent me home with like 35 pounds of
sausage.
Ground beef.
Just got a slab.
He has apparently a ton of it. So
yeah.
Well, hey, wherever you guys are coming to us from, we appreciate you guys listening. Give us a like, follow, or subscribe, whatever's appropriate for the channel. And one of those will give you a notification whenever these episodes drop. But they are Tuesday and Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern. And that's the time to tune in for it. So if you've written us on Instagram DM or the website, those are the 2 channels that we check most frequently. And but regardless, we're behind on those a little bit. So
we're getting there.
Bear with us. Yeah, we're trying to get back through those. And we have some apparel on the website, but I won't drag that out. You guys can check that out if you want. And here we go.
Here we go. October 1st.
Nick, if you would, maybe just give me a little bit more of everybody. That's what I need.
Just touch. Just touch.
Yeah.
That better?
Yeah.
That's
louder.
Yeah. Hard to believe it's October 1st. If you're in Iowa, Illinois.
Give Jeremy a little bit of that. He'll appreciate that.
You want a little more?
Give him.
All right, sure. I'm old.
Give him a smidge.
A little more in your ears.
I'll take it.
We're coming off that road trip. That's what it is.
Yeah,
how's
good.
that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, testes 1, 2.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, it's October 1st. It's hunting season. Full bore at this point. Seasons are open. Tags are punching.
I told Nick earlier, I feel like I've been studying for the test like forever, and now I'm just ready to take it. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how I feel at this point. Like let's just get it. Let's just get it. Let's get it.
It's like finals week. You just got to start cranking through them.
And it hasn't even started yet. So.
I haven't really started yet. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that. Well, first of all, we talked about it a little bit on, I think, the Hunt Companion or whatever, but
Hunt Companion.
Several 200s already hitting the ground. Kentucky has smoked a few of them that I've seen at least.
Yeah.
I think 3 maybe, could be more.
Wow.
Not including in the 200s, but they also killed that. I sent you that 8-point that was like 170s.
Yeah, Magnum.
Monster 8. So yeah, I mean, big deer are falling. Missouri just opened. Wisconsin just opened. Minnesota just opened.
Yeah, there's probably more open now than
Ohio.
not open.
Maybe we've killed in Ohio.
Oh yeah, we'll be on the other side of the opener here. Somebody will, I bet you.
Somebody will in Ohio.
Maybe not.
Somebody will.
And I'm not saying just you or I, but of
a guy I know.
A
him
guy
and her.
I know. He and her.
What's the over? The over under here.
Of us getting one?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm not a big. How does that work?
I'm not a big sports guy.
I'm gonna say there's at least a 50% chance that somebody in our party kills this weekend. Next weekend.
Depends on how many guys.
I'd have to extend it a little bit.
I have it's me, Dale, Brian, Corey, and Jeremy's who I'm including.
I'd have to extend it a little bit. Like if you include the first week of season, because I don't know if I'll make it there Saturday.
So a realistic over under would be like.
Oh, somebody's slinging for sure. It's like
2 or 3.
It's like a 90% chance of slinging in the group.
Yeah,
that's high.
2 or 3 harvests.
I mean, I've got a lot of emphasis on you putting Corey on one pretty quick.
Yeah, Corey's good for a sling for sure. yeah.
Then 50% of it actually being punched.
Yeah. 50% of that manifesting in a deer down, but
he's
a good shot. That's not what I'm implying, but
I don't know. I mean, it's well, I mean, I guess, do you know which deer you're going after yet?
At the moment, I have a rough idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the deer at the shale pit is my initial thought here. But if I don't feel like I've got a...
Have you rolled out the 180? See, like kind of...
Not entirely.
He's just gone right now.
He's gone. He could show, or I could go get permission where I, in theory, like where he might be. So I may do that.
Yep. But for right now, he's kind of off the board
he's a little off the radar right now, as is that other, the other big one.
Yeah.
So, and that's okay. Truthfully, I'm right now, just because of the likelihood of getting on them and just how the season's going to unfold. And I like saving stuff for those other guys too. I mean, I'm between that deer at the shale pit and the big 5-year-old 8-point at Jared and Margie.
Oh yeah,
he's done there. I just can almost tell you I can go in there and kill him on the first set.
Put somebody else on him too,
or put somebody else on him. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where my head's at.
Feeling pretty good. Weather dependent, right? I mean, that's the thing that right now they don't know what's going to happen.
Well, that's what I'm banking my odds on.
Is that cold?
Because it looks good.
Long sitting cold front, then clear out.
Mm-hmm.
Never know in October. It could be 70 or 40.
Oh,
well, regardless, that
Can't
low
wait till
pressure
it's 40.
system with the rain, I think when it clears up, they're going to be crushing scrapes for a few days. You're going to have an early flurry of scrape activity.
I agree. Yeah, I'd say 50-50. 50-50 ball.
All right, we'll come back to it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. That's good. I mean, I feel good about it. I got to get there. But yeah.
I mean, if there's deer in the woods, there's a chance.
There's always a chance.
You know what I'm saying?
In the game. Well, yeah, let's dive right into it because we're kind of ready to rip. We got guests on today. Pretty cool. We've got Spook Spann on today. So
Spook Nation.
Yeah, so I would assume needs no introduction to a lot of our listeners in this, but Spook's out of Tennessee. We're just kind of talking pre-podcast there. And yeah, I think, the cool conversation is I think people have seen Spook in a lot of areas and, have seen this guy kill big deer, but there's also been a lot of questions around Spook and who he is, what he's done. And so I think there's just there's a lot of stuff out there that I'm excited to get in with him and just kind of talk about how he got into it and his background. Obviously, we were like just looking at his backdrop, his turkey. It was like just magnums all over the wall.
Antlers under his wall.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that'll be really cool. And I mean, for us, it's always awesome to get somebody on that has like the same passion that we have and kind of understand what makes them tick, behind their pursuit of these giant whitetails across the country. So pretty stoked.
He's just been in the industry for a long time. I mean, a lot of us, like younger generation, naively be like, "Oh, that's that jacked old tan dude that kills all the giants," And I told him yesterday on our phone call.
Yeah,
I was like, wasn't there some sort of like run-in with the game? And he's like, well, yeah. And there's a whole story to that too, which I'm sure we're gonna get into. But
probably also a lot of misconceptions because of how the industry is in that story and what has been third party down the road heard about how that went down.
Yeah. Well, there always is. And so we, you and I do our best to not pass judgment beforehand. I'm like, if you hear something like that, we're like, okay, well now I got to talk to him. I
want to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Exactly. And see how that went and sort it out for ourselves. So excited for the conversation. And Spook seems like a really awesome dude. So
he's killing giants. So I'm always curious.
All right, let's get him on.
All right. We got you, Spook.
Hey guys, how are y'all doing?
All right, brother. We appreciate you jumping on this afternoon with us. It's always funny. We kind of have to look at our calendars and stuff. We're like, all right, we're recording this September 19th, but Nick informs us it's dropping on October 1st, which is just like a whole different mindset than it is right now.
True. And of course, I love October for many different reasons. And of course, I was born on Halloween night. So
No, you weren't.
No way.
Is that where the
it's always
nickname
been a big
comes
month.
from?
It is. I was born on Halloween night. The doctor asked my mom what my name was going to be, and she hadn't decided yet. And he said, well, I guess we got us a little Spook for now.
Holy
Ha, ha, ha.
cow, man. That's
And by the time
funny.
she decided, it was too late. Everybody was calling me Spook.
It's a good nickname. I don't know anybody else named Spook.
No, well, it makes sense now.
And it goes well
Yeah.
with Spann, so that works out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very cool. See, podcast over. We figured it out. That's the aim. Well, cool, man. Well, so you're calling us right now from Tennessee. Born and raised in Tennessee?
Correct. I was born and raised in Dixon County, just about 35 miles outside of Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And I just lived here all my life.
Very cool. Which, I don't want to disrespect the South in this, but, typically when you think about guys who are killing big bucks consistently, you're not thinking of Southerners necessarily.
Correct. And I haven't killed, that many. I mean, I've killed 5 and 6 and 7-year-old deer here, but we just don't have the same genetics as they do, obviously, in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that at a young age. I went to a show in 1985 and met some guys there from Western Kentucky, and immediately just started hunting Western Kentucky and started seeing and killing bigger deer, and then just expanded to Southern Illinois and then started going to Kansas, and just kind of went from there. But I mean, I occasionally kill a good deer here, and I know about 3 really good ones right now that I'm trying to find.
Interesting. And you guys have velvet season in Tennessee now, right?
We do. I've not had any luck in the velvet season in Tennessee. I never found the right one to hunt, but usually most of my velvet hunts that I've done have been in Kentucky.
Yep, which makes sense. That's a hop, skip, and a jump for you to get into Western Kentucky.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can see him, but this buck right here beside me is 207. I killed him he was my first velvet buck. I killed him like 3rd day of season and, a few years ago. And, he was 207, and it was, it was awesome getting to hunt early and velvet in Kentucky. And I had hunted the early season in Kentucky for several years before I actually killed one in velvet, but I've killed a few mule deer in velvet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love it. I don't always find. I just don't always get on the big one early. On occasions.
Yeah. Well, Spook, just for our audience, so born and raised in Tennessee. What was your background growing up? I mean, did you grow up in a hunting family?
I did. So my dad was a big hunter, bass fisherman. We had bird dogs. We quail hunted. We bass fished. I grew up in the sawmill and lumber business.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I had access to equipment and land. And everybody knew my family. So I basically was spoiled growing up. I had a lot of places to hunt. And I went to church. My family went to church with a couple of guys that bow hunted. Bought my first bow when I was 13. I only knew 6 guys that even owned a bow, and they were all older men. No young guys hunted back then. Bow hunted, and I just fell in love with it immediately.
That's pretty cool. I mean, we talk about that a lot. Just looking through, the kind of timeline there from the 80s and then the 90s into the 2000 time period, and it's like we always kind of scratch our head when it's like, man, when did archery or bow hunting become so popular? Because now it's like, I mean, almost everybody that I know that hunts deer is a bow hunter.
Yeah. Well, I bought my first bow. I was 13. I begged my mom to get it for me for my birthday, but season opened at the end of September, so I talked her into buying it for me early. And like I said, I didn't know very many people that even owned a bow. Very few of them were serious bow hunters. They just hunted. They'd kill an occasional doe or spike or something. And I just got really serious about it really early. And then for the next few years, next 3 or 4 years, I knew a lot of guys that bought bows in the next few years, but I was the youngest by far of everybody that I knew for probably a 10-year period that had one.
And how long did you were you hunting like just in Tennessee before you started to say, man, what if I could get to another state, or what if I could jump into Kentucky?
I pretty much, I didn't hunt out of state until I basically got married in 1985. The only thing I had done out of state is there was a group of us that would go to Wyoming, in the Black Hills. We would, where we're rifle hunting. And so about probably 83, I went out there with 84 in that time period, went with a group of guys, and we were actually making drives in the mountains and hills of Wyoming, and we're actually pretty successful, believe it or not. It was a lot of fun, but didn't really get serious in 85, which is the year I got married. And that's the only reason I can remember a lot of the correlation of how things happen. I went to a show and met those guys from Western Kentucky that they actually had a waterfowl guiding service, but they had 2 big bucks hanging up in their booth. And I just kept questioning them about a place to deer hunt. Finally, the guy said, yeah, I got a place you can hunt. I got a lease you can hunt on. So I just started hunting. I was paying him $100 a day to go sit on the property he had leased. And then I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Ballard County Refuge.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Well, back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, it was phenomenal. And that's where these guys were at. So I really got exposed to big bucks, and more than I had ever thought I'd ever see in a lifetime, hunting on properties around that refuge. I ended up buying a farm next to the refuge, and it was phenomenal. But they ended up turning it into public hunting and pretty much ruined it.
Yep, seems to be it. I mean, that's the hard thing when we talk about a lot of people, and obviously Spook, you mentioned kind of when you're going out to Western Kentucky at that time frame, like, we have the conversation a lot where people are like, man, it sure seems like we're killing more and bigger bucks than we ever have. At the same time, talk to a lot of guys who are like, man, if you hunted, the 90s in Iowa, or just like you were saying there on that, around that refuge in Western Kentucky, like, I mean, are there more bucks? Are we killing more big bucks? Or are we killing more big bucks, but
We're killing more, but that's because there's a lot more hunters and a lot more guys after them.
Yeah.
I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, my mom and dad, big thing in the country, we'd go out and mom and dad would play cards with a couple other couples, and the kids would just run around and play and whatever. And on the way home, we'd be on the way home, and daddy would swing the car lights around in a couple of fields on the way home. And just right there, a half a mile from my house, there was 4 bucks that were staying in the field there all the time. I remember them so well. And one of them's hanging right over my head right here. My dad got it, but they were all 170 to 180 class deer.
Wow.
And I've never seen 4 bucks standing together anywhere in the state of Tennessee that were all over 170.
Yeah.
And so, and I remember I saw around 86 or 87, I saw a buck. I hunted a buck that was over 200, and I saw him one time. And had I had a muzzleloader then, like I've got now, I'd have killed him. But the muzzleloader I was hunting with was a, Hancock with a long eye release scope, and
Yeah.
and it just he was probably 200 yards, and I just, couldn't get it, wasn't conducive for a reasonable shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it does seem that way. And obviously we talk about the enhancement of technology around trail cameras and now cellular cameras, and it's like, it kind of lifts the curtain, to what's out there, where back then, like you said, or when we grew up in Pennsylvania, right, we would go spotlighting pretty much every night, that we legally could. And so that's how we saw
would
them.
go out. Yeah, actually, me and my wife, we got, of course, married young, and I'd have another buddy, and we'd go out and just, we'd go eat dinner or go to a movie or something, and we'd ride around for a couple hours, and it was nothing for us to see 3 to 10 bucks that were from 150 to 170. Now you couldn't do that for anything.
That's crazy.
You can do it in metropolitan Nashville,
Sure.
but in the city,
Yeah.
but you can't do it out here.
And do you think that's just pressure and hunting pressure that's kind of reduced that, or?
Well, we had a lot less deer then.
Okay.
A lot less. I mean, back then, now if I don't see 10 or 12, 15 deer, I think it's a crappy afternoon,
Yeah.
And back then, if you saw one or two a day in a morning, evening hunt, that's a good day.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I climbed a tree with a Baker tree stand and sat there. I mean, I the first really big buck I ever killed around here I was a junior in high school. And if I wasn't playing basketball, I was hunting. And I saw, I think, 5 bucks the whole season.
Wow.
And whereas a lot of times now I'll see 5 to 10 bucks in one afternoon hunt.
Mm-hmm.
But so, there's just a lot more deer now than there was. I think that's part of it. We had EHD here about 12 years ago, and it just ripped us up. I had a legit potential state record typical. I had him on camera every day. I mean, I already had him mount. I already figured out how I was going to mount him, and EHD hit, and it just wiped us out.
Jeez. Yeah. There's a lot of places that said that, like that 2012 EHD outbreak. I mean, from Mississippi to Pennsylvania, and it just, devastated.
We have never really, even though we have it's getting there, and we might be close now. It's just now gotten back to something like it was back then. That's how long it's taken.
Yeah.
Why do you think, Skip, that there's more? I mean, I'm not saying why do you think, but just what is the reason that there's more deer now than there were back then?
I don't know. I mean, most guys, ever since QDMA come on board, and it took rednecks. So it took, people in the South, it took most guys a long time to convert into that mentality. But once they did, guys, people aren't shooting, and we lowered the limits here in Tennessee. And so, which I like, but they're just not killing as many deer anymore.
Yeah.
And it's getting really hard to find a place to hunt here because we got so many people moving in to Middle Tennessee, the Nashville area, that all the land's getting chopped up and sold. And all that generation of my dad's generation, the kids are selling the property and taking the money. And we got guys coming from California and New York and Chicago and all over the country buying land and moving to Tennessee. And it's really hard to find, if you don't own it, it's hard to find a good place to hunt.
Yeah. Seems to be the story kind of across the board anymore. Like, I know even in Kentucky where I'm at, like, even 5 years ago when I started buying some of the property in that area, like, it was pretty cheap. And then next thing you know, like, these guys from Texas and California start coming in, and they're like, they just sold a house on 2 acres for $1 million, and they can come out and buy 500 acres. And they're like, this is unbelievable. Like, I don't even know how you can do this.
Yeah, that's a quick version of what's happening, and then people just aren't shooting does. There's not near as many packing houses, meat processors around here anymore. We used to have one right here in my hometown. They went out of business. Now you got to drive 45 minutes to find it, and normally I'm not that guy who does my own processing, even though I do sometimes, but. And so, you get to, and life just gets in the way between, you got kids, you got ball games and plays and church and all these things going on in life. And you start looking at, every doe that comes out, I want to shoot her, and then I get to thinking about everything I got to do to take care of it. And I was like, I don't, and as you can imagine, I mean, every time I climb a tree, I'm expecting to shoot a big buck. And so it's hard for me to shoot a doe. Well, that's the way a lot of guys are looking for a good deer. Of course, everybody's idea of what they're going to settle for is different. But And so they don't want to mess up their hunt by shooting a doe.
Yeah, I think that's where cell cams really has changed it, because prior, even with normal SD, like you still had to go pull the card. You didn't know in real time. Now, if you've got a couple 3 and 4-year-old bucks, moving through a plot or hitting a corn pile or whatever it is, like you're probably not going to shoot the first doe that comes out, because odds are you're banking on one of those guys. You know that they're coming in all the time. You see it, with some real time.
Yeah, I mean, and especially in states where you can hunt over feed, which is obviously a whole nother conversation. But here, I mean, we're real big on planting food plots and doing things. And yeah, you just don't want to shoot a doe when you're trying to kill that buck that you've got pictures of.
Yep.
And and I love trail cameras. I mean, I absolutely love them. I bought the first one I ever saw advertised in North American Whitetail. I don't even know how many years, 25, 30 years ago, and it used a 35 millimeter film, and I'd go get 1 hour photo. I couldn't wait to see what was on it, and just love them. And it's made deer hunting a lot more fun, and I think it's helped it tremendously, because you can see what you've got and make a decision on what particular animal you want to go after. So I just think it's added a level of enjoyment to deer hunting that you just didn't have. I mean, it used to be really hard to go climb a tree every day having no idea what you were hunting.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about that all the time, especially going back to you saying about sporting events, kid stuff, church, etc. It's like, time's a limiting factor. The last thing we want to be doing is hunting a ghost, essentially, for 4 days.
And what it's allowed me to do, I used to hunt every minute I could. So if I wasn't playing ball or in school, I was hunting. Then when I got out of college, if I wasn't working, I was hunting. I thought that I had to go every afternoon after work and every Saturday. And I would go on Sunday morning and wear my Sunday clothes under my coveralls, climb down the tree, jump in the truck and drive to church, strip the coveralls off and go in church, and then that evening go back again. But what trail cameras did, learning about weather patterns, learning about the moon phases, it allowed me to actually hunt a lot less, but be way more efficient. And so, that's another great thing about trail cameras.
For sure. It's had a lot of weird effects. I mean, from a management standpoint, I don't think there is a more influential thing that's like ever happened. Because exactly like what you're saying is you can see what you've got. There's no more real guess anymore. Just purely going off what you've seen from the road or from the stand. So from that standpoint, it's an amazing tool.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, but it has. I mean, especially from a selectivity standpoint. I mean, we've covered it quite a bit as far as like how it might affect somebody's mindset as far as what bucks are willing to shoot and stuff. But I do think it also plays a factor on the doe harvest that we're talking about. I mean,
I think it also plays a big factor on the access side. I mean, think about how much ground even the three of us with just our cameras could monitor without even hunting.
I know.
Like we're just monitoring it to see if something shows up.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love too. I can sit here at home and look at 30, 40, 50 cameras on cell cams in 5, 6, 7 states. And I'm looking, like last year, I knew about 2 bucks. The neighbors had seen them in the beans. The beans turned yellow. They kind of disappeared, during that time when they're shedding velvet and everything. But I had a good feeling they were on me. And right around that, that key October red moon phase, I get a picture of one of them in the food plot. So the next evening, I'm sitting in the stand and I killed him first hunt.
Yep.
Had it not been for the cell camera, and and if I'd been back in the situation even where I was having to check cards every weekend or whatever, by the time I checked the card and saw he was on there, he could have been on there 2 or 3 or 4 days in a row.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have known it until the weekend, and then the moon phase is over and he's back to a nighttime pattern again.
Yep. Too late.
So it's just so, but I just love it because I'll literally for the last 3 weeks and from now to the end of the season, I'll have people sending me pictures, friends from all over the country what do you think about this deer? How old is he? What do you think I should do? You know?
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm the worst person you can do that with, because I tell every one of them, oh, you need to pass him up. You need to give him another year, you know.
Yep.
Most of the time that's the case, you know. But I did have a lady send me one last week. It was awesome. I wished I had it where I could show it to you. This deer, he looked like he was 9 or 10 years old, and he had probably maybe a 120 set of horns, you know.
Mhm.
I told her, I said, it don't matter. I said, he's old enough. If you get a chance to shoot him, you need to shoot him.
You're gonna put an arrow in him, it's
He-
gonna turn to dust.
Yeah, he was a monarch. I mean, but yeah, most of the time guys are sending me 3 and 4 year olds, and they're trying to talk themselves into not shooting it. So they want somebody to tell them not to.
Yeah, that tends to be the case. We get that a lot, and I mean, it's like you know,
Is that what it is, or do they want the affirmation so they can shoot it?
That I think
most of them want to shoot it.
they do want an affirmation on like
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear, yeah, it needs another year.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this
They
is
know
the
that
best,
might be the truth.
This is the best one I've got right now on it.
Yeah, and I tell everybody, every deer is circumstantial.
Yeah.
You know, it's according to, you know, what are the circumstances surround you, surrounding. Have you got a big piece of property? Can you let him go? You feel good that he'll make it? Or you got 20 acres and, you know, you got 5 neighbors hunting around you. If you get a chance, you know, you probably better kill him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so,
that's huge. I think the circumstance, and that's been the biggest part with a lot of things, especially around social media and things like that we get into, is it's, you know, people see guys posting, you know, big Iowa bucks and passing 4-year-old Iowa bucks that are 170 inches. Then they're sitting in whatever, West Virginia, and they're like, well, I guess I should do that. And it's like, no, you shouldn't.
Exactly. I mean, I shoot deer in Tennessee that I wouldn't even, you know, I'll shoot a buck in Tennessee I wouldn't even pick my binoculars up for in Kansas.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's just, you know, it's all, and you know what? I'm proud to death. I've killed just about every year I'll kill a big old management buck, 5, 6, 7-year-old 6-pointer or 7-pointer or short G3 8-pointer or something. And people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you shot that deer. I was like, man, he's 6 years old.
Yeah.
I don't want him in my food plot running off a 165 4-year-old.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so, you know, I keep bully bucks are just, you know, I mean, it's hard to do it as often as you need to if you own your own land, because usually the tag situation don't allow you to shoot some of the ones you need that need to be killed. And, you know, I get so tickled that, you know, somebody will say, oh, well, just take somebody in there and shoot it. Well, it don't work like that. You know, it's not like he's standing by the tree every day at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I could hunt there 10 more afternoons before I ever saw him again. And so, you know, it just makes it. And then when I see that buck run out in the middle of the cornfield in, you know, November 8th and run every buck in there off, and I'm just like, you know, it's just, I wish there was a way that we could manage our own properties better, you know, legally, you know, and I don't know, you know, maybe it's something like, I mean, the deal they have in Colorado where if you take the classes and you're in that particular, I forgot what the BR 549 name for it is, but they actually give you a certain amount of tags and you can kind of manage and your herd as you see fit. But I know that's kind of hard. I mean, I wish there was something maybe where if you own for so many X amount of acres, you get an extra tag or something, even if you had to pay $500 for it or something.
Well,
you know
what? There is like in Ohio, they have it's a crop damage tag is what it is. We don't have DMAP up here, but you can get buck tags for like Christmas tree damage, which would require you planting Christmas trees, obviously. And I don't know, you may have to show some proof of like of whatever. But I've had the guy out, and they were like, "Well, we can give you buck tags." And at the time, I was like, "Well, I don't need buck tags," but like. Now that we're having this conversation, it kind of makes me like wonder if there are some bucks that I'm likely to encounter that I don't really want to spend my one tag on.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes a big difference, and especially when I had my properties in Kansas. Oh my gosh, I would always see 3 or 4 just big old tank thug 6, 7, 8-year-old, field dress 220,
Yep.
swaggy brisket neck, just out there bullying, pushing deer around in the rut, and I'm just like, and I couldn't, and nothing I could do about it. So,
Yep.
The only catch with that deal in Ohio is they make you destroy like any potential trophy. So like you couldn't even do a European mount, which is a bummer because it's like it's still a buck on your farm. It's like there's no value there. You want to do something with them, but
that's kind of rough.
Yeah.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
That's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got the, so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance. Sure. The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt. So Spook, what's your current hunting looking like? Do you still own farms, or are you traveling to lease?
Can I tag this on? Can I tag this on?
Both. I actually. It's a long story, kind of. I'll try to make it as short as possible. My dad passed away 3 years ago, and he and I were partners in several of our places. And so I actually ended up selling two of my best places, one in Western Kentucky and one in Southern Illinois. And so, so that's going to change my stuff a little bit. But I'm very, very fortunate. I've got a network of people that help me all over North America, from Canada to Mexico. And so I'm usually pretty fortunate at finding, several good deer, and then it's a matter of, getting access to it. And so I've been pretty fortunate. I never thought in a million years I'd ever be able to, accomplish that. But and I still own some properties, and I of course do everything I can to make them the best that they can be. I've been working on food plots, I guess, for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And we got some good rain the other day from the hurricane, so everything's looking good. And I'm fortunate. I know about 3 unusually big bucks here in Tennessee, and 2 of them are right here close that I'm really looking for. And so I'm working hard to, on the food plots and getting my stands ready and running cameras so that when and if one of those show up, I'm going to be ready. We had a huge acorn crop last year, which made hunting very difficult. And this year it's not near to the level it was last year. So it's going to be a better year. And so I'm really focused on a couple of these deer because 2 of them are over 200, which is very unusual for Tennessee. And so I'm this may be one of those years where I don't kill a big one because I'm going to be putting a lot of time and energy in trying to kill one of these deer.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So Spook, I was going to ask kind of in tandem with Jeremy's question there, is the mindset like it's buck specific? I mean, you've said it a few times now that I'm kind of getting the hint that like you're seeking out a specific class of animal, and then whether it's on your property or, you have to get permission or by any means, it's like, how do I gain access to that animal?
Exactly. So, and I never thought in a million years I'd ever live to see the day where people would be calling me and say, hey, I know about a 200 in Kansas, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I know about 4 right now. I know of 4 legitimate 200 plus inch deer in Kansas, and I don't have a tag this year.
I'll see you there.
Two of them have already been killed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One got killed a few days ago by 11-year-old kid.
I was going to say, what were they, 8?
Yeah. He was that buck was 268.
Wow.
By an 11-year-old? Where does that kid go from there?
Exactly. I mean, I probably shouldn't even.
No, this is the right place for it.
Oh my gosh. I've seen it happen so many times. And listen, I've got a son and and my daughter's hunted, and I love to see them be successful. But I don't think really long term, I don't think there's any humanly possible way that a kid can appreciate that buck.
No, it's not possible.
And I don't think that, the likelihood of him ever killing one bigger is extremely slim.
Yep.
And I actually think that I think it'll make him less likely to want to hunt that much anymore.
Agree. Yeah.
And so now I get it. That's the way Kansas does their youth season. And if the person thinks that that's the only way they're going to be able to get it is to carry a kid in there and kill it, I get it. I know a guy that had that buck on camera all summer on a buck muffin, and they called me, and I had the first opportunity to work out being able to hunt that deer, and he didn't even make it to the muzzleloader season, and I didn't have a tag, so I couldn't go anyways. I had another buddy that had a commissioner's tag, and I tried to work out something for him, and he was already on another big deer in Kansas, which he just killed a day or two ago. It was 213, and so matter of fact, the only 3 deer I know about in Kansas so far are 213, 240 something, and 268.
Jeez.
And but anyways, I just find out about deer, and some deer 200 is just a number. It doesn't necessarily mean he has to be 200. It just means that we're just looking for something in that realm.
Mhm.
I mean, I got a buddy that's got one that's probably in the 80s in Oklahoma, and I think he's awesome. I was like, yes, I'm gonna go hunt that deer. And so but we just try to find the best ones. Some years we don't find, maybe just 1 or 2, and then they get killed or disappear or whatever. And then some years, like last year, you find out about 8 or 10, and things kind of come together, and you kill a few of them. So it's just a matter of having a lot of contacts and access to a lot of different places, and then being able to gain access some way.
So I guess, Spook, walk us through that. Like, let's say somebody says, or you find out about a big deer, whether it's Kansas or Oklahoma or whatever. Do you then the next step is like, okay, great, he's there. Now I got to figure out how to get access to hunt him. Is that usually the next step? So
usually I start by contacting. Usually the person that tells me about it has some knowledge. He's a friend of a friend or a relative, or maybe it's an outfitter that has the deer. And I work really well with outfitters. I've had great luck working with outfitters on big bucks. And so then you start with the person who got the picture.
Yep.
And you see how they feel about working something out. And then you just start going around the edges looking for a neighbor that will let you hunt. And a lot of times it's road trips, weekend road trips. Sometimes my wife goes with me. Sometimes a buddy will go with me. A lot of times the guy that told me about the deer maybe lives in the state or the area where he's at, and I'll go meet him, and he and I will go ride around and talk to the neighbors. And so it's almost every scenario you can imagine, from an old farmer who just doesn't care and lets you hunt, or to somebody that wants, some kind of compensation for the opportunity. And so then you just have to figure out where you can meet, where everybody's happy. And then sometimes you just don't get permission. I mean, and a lot of times, like these other deer that I just mentioned, they get killed by somebody else. And and I've hunted deer all season and find out after season they got killed in November, which is excruciating. I had a buck in Ohio one time, it was 225, and I hunted him all the way up until the end of January. Matter of fact, ATA was at Columbus, Ohio that year, and it came a winter storm on the last day ATA, and everybody left early, and I left the show and went and got in the stand and saw every buck that I had on camera from September to January came in the bean field that evening, except for the big one. And I found out in the following May that he got killed on November 13th.
Wow.
Jeez.
So I was wasting my time
Just hunting
but
a
that's
ghost.
just part of it. That's
Yeah.
part of it, you know. And and then I've done really well. I've kind of, you know, gotten to a point with outfitters, you know, they want PR, they want promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I usually try to work out something with them. And then if I'm able to harvest the deer, I'll advertise for them, and usually all you have to do is just post the deer and tell everybody who you were hunting with, and that's it. Matter of fact, this buck right here was a young outfitter who was just getting started, and we worked out something. And I told him, I said, I can't tell you how many people will book. I can just tell you that within a couple of weeks, every serious whitetail hunter in America will know where he came from. And I posted the deer a couple of times on Facebook and Instagram, and within 2 weeks, he booked up for 3 years.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So, you know, he made, you know, he did good off that deer. Still doing good off of it. And that's great, you know.
Yeah. And are those typically like one and done type deals, Skip or Spook? Is like you go and knock them out, and it's like, all right, well that spot's burnt now, so it's full of guys for 3 years now.
Usually a guy has only got one, or only get a deer like that once every 5 or 6 years. Now, there's an occasional person, maybe, you know, I know a guy in Ohio that seems to be getting 1 or 2 good ones every year. And he and I are working together for a possibility at a deer this year. He sent me a couple pictures yesterday, as a matter of fact. And, you know, there's an occasional, you know, I got a buddy in Kansas that'll have a good deer just about every year. The problem with Kansas is just it's way harder to get drawn now.
Can't get
than it
drawn
used to be.
anymore. Yeah, I was gonna say. I think I drew every year for as long as I ever applied, and then all of a sudden it was like now it's every other, maybe.
Exactly. Excuse me. And it's really hurting the outfitters. I mean, this guy, you know, he moved to Kansas and set, you know, just to make a living, moved his whole family, has his family, his whole setup there. And he is, you know, spent a lot of money on leases and stuff. And he built his business up. And now all of a sudden only about half or less of his hunters are getting drawn. And it's,
wow.
yeah, it's causing him a really big problem. Matter of fact, I talk to him almost every week, and he's having trouble figuring out what he's going to do in the future.
Jeez, we're seeing in Kansas too, like especially in the last 5 or 6 years, just and obviously us included, out of state guys, but more and more guys leasing from out of state, and even the locals are like, hey, you know, all those big 5 and 6 year old bucks we used to see consistently, we're not seeing now. Now we're seeing more 3 and 4 year old type deer, and you know,
and buying. I mean, the fact you can get a tag on 8 acres or more.
Exactly. So the pressure has just changed things. Obviously, since whatever 2011 or 13 or whatever it is, crossbows being there now too. Like a huge change in the swing of ability to hunt that state, and the pressure I think has affected the age quality in some areas more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And there are some spots. I mean, I know of a few areas that are still really, really good. And, you know, I know the area that I used to own land and hunt is actually went down significantly over the years. And so, and it's gotten hunted harder. And then some areas are still kind of like they were, you know, 20 years ago. But I mean, I was kind of the same way. I felt like, I don't think Iowa's as good as it used to be. And I used to own a farm in Iowa, and it was, I mean, it was phenomenal. But then it just got so hard to get. It's just so hard to get a tag. It just got. Mm-hmm. And when the economy crashed in 2008, I ended up selling it like in around, I don't know, 2010 or 12 or something like that. But I haven't even really gotten serious about Iowa again since then, just because I've been able to find good deer in other places. And it's, like I said, it's so hard to get a tag. I just kind of quit trying.
So what are the big focus states? You mentioned Ohio and Kansas, obviously. You got some in Tennessee. They're still looking at like in Oklahoma, I guess. Oklahoma seems to be one that's upcoming.
You know, always Kentucky and Illinois are always going to be two of my top places. Ohio is always one of my top places. And I love Oklahoma just because, it's easy to get tags, and I feel like it's a sleeper state. And so I've got a lot of good friends in Oklahoma, and I killed a 221 in Oklahoma about 10 years ago. And ever since then, and I know a lot of people there. I know a couple of game and fish guys that are actually good guys, and we collaborate a lot on things, and some different, have different contacts there. And then, I never did have a really good contact in Texas until the last few years, and now I've found a couple of good places down there that are low fence that have some really good deer. And it's a fun place to go late season when things have slowed down here, in the Midwest. And so, I've started going there a little bit more, but yeah, mostly Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Ohio, Kansas, Missouri. I like Missouri, and I used to own a farm up there, and I've killed some good deer in Missouri. And then I still like Alberta and Saskatchewan, and it's just a matter of having the right contact. And I've killed some really good deer up there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it seems like, especially post-COVID, I know a lot of people have talked about the Canadian provinces having some really great deer because there was a period that the hunting pressure was so low.
Yeah, so Alberta, of course, my show used to air in Wild TV in Alberta, in Canada. So I got to know a lot of people up there, and Canada turned out to be a really good opportunity for me. And people saw how much passion I had for it, and it's actually easier to find a place to hunt in Canada than it is in the United States.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, because what's Canada's policy, though? You have to have a guide or something to be able to hunt as a U.S. citizen? Is that what it is?
I can't remember. I mean, I normally do. I mean, I always do, just because the logistics, it's so far up there.
Yep.
And I've gotten enough, relationships now where that's the route I go. And I'm not into, going up there and spending 4, 5, 6 weeks trying to figure it out. They live there, they can figure it out, and then we'll strategize. We'll fine tune the strategy once I get there. I mean, most of the time, by the time I've gotten there, we've had 30 conversations over what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
Right.
We've looked at aerial photos and strategized to the point where we have a plan. And then once I get there, usually if I can see it, once I look at everything, I kind of know in my mind what I think we should do. And I had a guy I hunted up there for about 10 or 15 years, and I learned the area. And so we always had a plan, even from year to year. And he always had big deer, so it was a lot of fun. But yeah, Canada. The thing about Canada is you can run all the trail cameras you want, and you may get a picture of a good deer or not, but you can sit there. You sit there 2 weeks during the rut in a good place with a good doe herd. There's a good chance you're gonna see a giant. Now they're hard. Obviously, they're very difficult to bow hunt, but if you're into muzzle loading or rifle at all, it's really good.
That's wild.
So how many 200s have you killed?
Well, a lot. I'd rather, I mean, I've been very, very blessed, and I've, somewhere over 20.
Over 20?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to be the most, right?
Well, do you know?
I don't know anybody that's killed, I think Josh has killed 6. I think,
Yep.
the Eskers have killed 4
Yep.
apiece.
Yep.
Which I basically kind of consider them one. They're 2 of my best friends, great guys. They they kind of work as a team. So between the 2 of them, they've killed 8 or 9, and some really gorgeous in the 190 class also. And then, I think, well, I don't know how many Lee's killed, 3 or 4. Stan's killed 4, I
4.
think.
Mhm. Yeah.
And my
Adam
buddy,
Case has killed 3 or 4. I
Yeah.
think.
Higgins
and
is
then
killed.
and then I
Higgins has
tell you
killed a couple,
somebody that he might fuss at me for mentioning his name, but Ryan Siders, my buddy from Yeti's he's probably killed 8.
Really?
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah, he's killed. Yeah, he's spanking them. Him and his brother are spanking them. But
Wow.
they don't know, they don't want any PR.
Publicity. Yeah. Well, I've never heard anywhere close to 20. That's crazy. And it's over 20 you've killed?
Yes, and I know a guy that's killed probably. Man, I know he's killed probably around 15.
That's more bucks than I've killed in my life, period.
Yeah, but now he's financially, he's really strong. He owns a lot of really good farms, and he is a very serious hunter. Nobody knows him except the locals, and he just loves it. He just does it for personal enjoyment, which I admire tremendously.
Yeah.
And he loves it, and he thinks that non-typicals are ugly, and probably has passed up 10 or 12 over 200 non-typicals because he thought they were ugly. So he has a lot of good farms. He knows how to manage them. He grows the crops. He's got nice equipment, and he operates similar to Lee, except he's in a better area.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
so he's got access, and he's just he's a very, very unique individual. He loves to bow hunt. He loves to spot and stalk with a bow, but he's killed big ones with every weapon. And he's killed some spectacular deer. Really, I really do contribute my success to just having a lot of good contacts around the country and being able to find out a lot. Because I may find out about 8 or 10. If I get 1 or 2 of them, I feel like I'm blessed.
Wow.
And some years I don't get any, and some years I get 1 or 2, and a couple of years I've killed 3. If you get one of those years where you get that first one pretty early, like in Velvet in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
then it really gets you off to a good start, and you can focus on some other ones. But it's like anything else. It's all circumstantial. And of course, the other thing for me being blessed is, man, my wife is awesome, and I keep my bags packed. And when the trail camera hits and the front moves through and the moon's right and all the things click, I just get in the truck and leave, and I'll drive all night to get to wherever I need to be in the stand the next morning if that's what needs to happen. And so, being able to be flexible, watch the weather, watch the moon phases, and that's, as that's huge.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. I mean, are there, because everybody listening to this is going to be like, man, most people will never see a 200-incher in their life in a free range population. I guess
Right.
from your standpoint, being that you've hunted and you've killed so many of them, is there anything that you've started to connect the dots on, like from a trait side, whether it's property trait side or whatever, to say like, there's a couple things here, like if you're going to have a 200-inch deer, you best have this?
Well, most of the time, it's like anything else. I mean, most of the time, you're going to have to be in an area that's known for big deer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Illinois, almost the whole state, where is there a place in Illinois where you can go that's not known, there's somebody's killed a big deer there over a 20, 30-year period.
Mm-hmm.
So almost anywhere in Illinois, if you can find a place that's not being overhunted. And of course, Southern Illinois back 30 years ago was unbelievable. But the Golden Triangle was getting all the attention.
Mm-hmm.
And hunters were just, they were all driving right by a lot of big bucks. All the guys in Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama and Mississippi and the Carolinas were all going to central
Yep.
Central and north central Illinois. And southern Illinois was phenomenal. And Field and Stream ran an article like, I don't know, 25 years ago about Shawnee National Forest being the best public hunting area in the United States.
Game over.
Ruined it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ruined it. I mean, just ruined it. And I mean, used to up there in Vienna, opening shotgun muzzleloader season was like a festival.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, big bucks were being shot, and it was just incredible, I mean, I can't even explain. It was the same way in Ballard County, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
It was just incredible. And then when they did that, when they ran that, and all these guys started coming from all over, I tell you, there was a lot of hunters from PA there too.
Well, of course.
And when that happened, I mean, like, you can go up there and talk to somebody that owns a meat processor now, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we used to get, it was nothing for us to get, 30, 40 bucks that were booners to 200 back in the day. And now they might get one or two." And so, but it's still really, so now here's what I think's happened. Now it's fallen off so much, people have quit going.
Yep.
So it's actually getting better again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild when you start to look at those kind of things, because that's what, especially around that COVID time frame. Jared and I actually hunted Southern Illinois during COVID year, 2021, something like that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was the worst experience I've ever had.
man,
in the
yeah, we
woods.
couldn't. I've never seen so many hunters out there. I mean, it was
terrible.
every property, every block was packed with hunters, and that was during whatever second week in November.
So the area where my farm was at, it wasn't like that. I mean, you might sit there on opening the 3 days of shotgun muzzleloader season, and I'd sit in the stand all day, 3 days, and you might hear 20 shots as far as you could hear.
Mm.
And I mean, in my opinion, that's not much.
No. No, not at all.
But I had 975 acres with I had one whole side of the farm was bordered by a bluff that a deer couldn't even go up and down. And then I had a 700-acre sanctuary that I never stepped foot in that laid up against that bluff. And then I planted 50 or 60 acre of food out around the outside edges of that sanctuary.
Mm. That'll do it.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody in America that has a 700-acre sanctuary that they never even go in? I didn't even go in there looking for sheds.
Really? Wow.
Nothing. I was totally 100% undisturbed unless I was tracking a deer, which usually, thank goodness I never had to go in over a couple hundred yards.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just and so corn and beans all the way around, which obviously is awesome if you're in a farm country where you have a lot, which is the biggest problem that we have here in Middle Tennessee is we don't have much row crop. So mostly, stick eaters, but that criteria you were mentioning, obviously, if you're in farm country, and the farm I had in Iowa, tons of corn and soybeans. The farm I had in Missouri was tons of corn and soybeans. And then even in Kansas, lots of corn, beans, milo. And so all that obviously helps tremendously when there's a lot of grain for the deer, for, part of the year.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear.
Man, Jared, we are tree stand fanatics, and I think the one thing that we have learned over all these years is to kill big bucks, we got to be mobile. We've been hunting out of Lone Wolves for many years, the original Lone Wolf, and then obviously with the custom gear stuff, we're using the .5 and the .75. Yeah. And the one thing that we talked about is like, what if there were no cables? here we are.
I really just don't know how you can beat it, frankly. But, a lot of that came too from a relationship that we've built with the DeQuistos. We've had both Cody and Andre on the podcast a few times. The passion for hunting, the outlook on the sport and stuff, I think is eye to eye with how we look at it. Everything that has gone into building this brand and to building these tree stands is something that we want to be a part of.
This is the 40th anniversary of these guys creating tree stands that have been critical to how we hunt whitetail deer today. If you look over the past, you'll see Andre's designs being implemented across so many stands over the years. Such a cool thing, but really has changed the way that we all hunt whitetail deer from above now.
Right now, you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, to get 7% off anything on the entire website. Be the lone wolf.
How many times did somebody reach out to you and said they had a 200 and you end up getting a look and you're like, not there?
Yeah. So most of the time, all this starts with a picture.
Yep.
And so you get the picture and you're like, but most of the time, admittingly, I mean, it's at least a really good deer. It may not be a 200, but but it could be a 179 pointer that's 5 or 6 years old. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I guess it's funny. I'm sitting here looking at a deer that I was told about, and I just went merely on the description from the farmer, and I was like, let's just see if we can see the deer and see what he is. And the deer was coming into a big bean bottom, and he was coming out of some hills, and there was like an old clear cut with big grown up cedar thicket, and had a little inlet that went up, and a ditch, and we hung a stand in a giant sycamore tree and in that ditch, and there was a couple big trails, and front moves through, temperature drops 20 degrees, the moon's great. I climbed the tree, killed him first afternoon. It was a 203 10 pointer.
Yeah.
So the farmer knew what he was talking about. He said, yeah, man, he's like this wide and this tall. He's like, looks like he's got 10 points. He's like, and the guy didn't even charge me anything to hunt. He just said he was happy to see somebody that appreciated it. We got it on video. It was awesome. It was just beautiful. And so, it was, so you just don't ever know, things happen. I mean, the biggest thing that happens to me is I find out about them and they get killed.
Yep.
And that's, everybody wants to kill a big buck. There's, whenever somebody sees one or hears about one, usually there's somebody hunting him on every piece of property. And so it's just a matter of, who gets the first opportunity and can follow through with it. And, you try to do the things we try to have in every state, every property, the best food source that we can possibly have, regardless, if that's a food plot or standing corn, beans, milo, brassicas, clover, alfalfa, whatever it is that we can do. And then if it's somebody else's property, I usually try to go to the farmer and buy 4 or 5 acres of beans or 4 or 5 acres of corn. And then I'll go in there and hand crank seed under the corn and beans to get a green plot under that. And that usually works fabulous. I'm trying to do that on one right now, deer that I'm working on getting permission. And if I can get permission in this one cornfield, I think I can kill the deer in 2 evenings, And so, I'm one of those kind that I think every deer's killable. I just think everyone's killable. It's just a matter of if you're not killing him, you're probably over hunting it, or you're just not on the right piece of property.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because with the technology we have now and cell cameras and all, if you're not killing him, it's usually because you're limited in how your job, your family, your life is getting in the way, which is totally understandable and happens to everybody. Or you're going too much, which I have a lot of guys that'll say, man, they'll ask me and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I said, well, I said, are you hunting mornings in October? Oh yeah, man, we're hunting hard. I was like,
Back off.
stop hunting mornings in October.
Yeah.
Well, why? I said, because the deer are on a feed pattern. I said, most of the time it's it's hot. The deer are getting, unless you're in a very unique situation, which you can, there's places in the Midwest where you can figure out where the deer's bedding and occasionally get in the middle, but most of the time you're hurting yourself more by hunting in the mornings, except during the rut, because it's so hard to get in between them before they get back to bed.
Yeah.
And I told one friend of mine that was hunting an awesome deer, 186 deer, hunted for 2 years. And I saw him one morning at the restaurant. And I was like, y'all hunted this morning? It's like October 12th or something. Oh, yeah, we hunted. And that's what I told him. I was like, and so I didn't say nothing that day. And later on in the season, they didn't kill the deer. And he asked me about it. And I was like, dude, I would stop. He's like, what do I need to do? I said, I would stop hunting that deer in the mornings in October. I said, just pick your evenings to go. I said, rainy evenings, front moves through, it's cooler, the wind's perfect. The moon's right. Just go in on certain evenings. He killed the deer on like the third day he hunted in the following year, and he was 186, 5x6, just a beautiful buck. So I think, that's one of the things that can hurt somebody is just overhunting their spot, especially in when it's not the rut.
Yeah. Man, I'm still like, my mind is still on that 200 conversation. Like, it's just, that's
okay. Yeah, I'm good with that.
It's wild how many you've killed. And like, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, because it's a touchy one.
Yeah.
I don't mean to get into like personal finances. I mean, I guess like,
no, it's okay. Yeah.
I guess kind of the question is like, how tied is that 200 game to finances? Like, is that a rich man's game? I guess like kind of the root of the question is like, man, everybody.
Well, I don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. It's understandable, because I mean, I get this all the time. People. Oh, if I had your money, I could do that too. Blah 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 blah. Well, I know a lot of I know a lot of hunters that are, way better off financially than I am, that have thrown millions of dollars at it and have never killed a 200.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So obviously there's a lot of other things that have to go into it.
Yeah.
And you guys know that.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course,
there's a lot of strategy and a lot of things that have to go into it.
Well, clearly, per what you're saying, Spook, networking is like one of the biggest. And so I'm picking up on things that you're saying. It's like, man, and you're not the first that I've heard say that. I mean, I'm smart enough to know it's like, man, if a guy can network and have the money to gain access or strike a deal with certain places or whatever,
exactly,
and also have the knowledge to be able to go in and kill the deer, you have to have, it seems like, a trifecta of all three.
Exactly. You got to be able. There's a big range of things. I mean, just take Josh, for example.
Yep.
Josh, I hunted with Josh and Sarah. They came and turkey hunted with me years ago. Nobody knew who they were. And Josh, I could just tell if he ever got the money, he was going to be dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
And
He got
we
it.
we had gazillion conversations, gazillions. And Josh was all hyped up, wanting to move to Iowa to get.
Yep.
So he and Sarah would have 3 tags each. And so answered a million questions. He said, if your ideal world, how would you do that? I said, well, I would try to buy, just like Lee does, I'd try to have access or buy as many farms in different locations as possible and just fix them up to the maximum, food, cover, everything. And I said, then you're probably going to attract the biggest buck in that area and the most deer. And then you just got to be willing to pass up big deer to kill giants, which not many people are. Not many people are going to pass up a 170 to 190 buck if it's 4 years old.
Right.
There's not many people are going to do it. And so you've got to be willing to say, and obviously the more successful you are, the easier that becomes. If you've never killed a 190, you're not going to pass a 190
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
And I get it. I totally get it. And I don't mean this each person obviously has to decide what they're happy with and based on their time and finances and all that. And I just love hunters. I don't want anybody, I don't think I'm better than anybody else or anything. I'm just blessed. I've been very fortunate. I'm a product of the perfect storm. A kid who grew up in a rural area, whose daddy loved to hunt, and I hunted, and I had some decent places to hunt, and I saw some big bucks, and then I fell intrigued with that, and then I expanded from that, and then I went from as a teenager shooting every legal buck that I saw to, I met Grant Woods in '85, and then got into the QDMA part and passing up deer, and then I was shooting 150s and 160s, and then graduated from that. And then I told my first cameraman, I said, I'll never pass up a booner. That year I passed up actually it wasn't 2 weeks later, I passed up a 175 and a 185, and he was just dog cussing me. But there was a 200 there, and that's what we were after, And so everybody has to gauge what makes them happy and makes them enjoy hunting in the woods the most. But I'm a victim of a perfect storm because for the last 30 years, I've been networking really all over the world, because I like to hunt a lot of different things. I've networked all over the world for almost every species that you can imagine. But whitetails obviously is my number one. And I love to mule deer hunt. I've got 10, 200-inch mule deer right here behind you. And I love to mule deer hunt. But when you do all these shows and ATA and SHOT Show and all these deer classics all over the country for 30 years, and everybody you meet that you get in a conversation with, you tell them, say, hey, if you ever run across something that you can't take advantage of yourself, I'd like to know about it. I may not can do anything, but I'd at least like to know about it. Well, then when you do that, and then you own property in 10 different states for years, and you meet you network over this gigantic network, and then somebody like Grant Woods, whose network is enormous, who's, continent wide, and different people. And I mean, I've had a lot of hunters like Jim Shockey and Hank Parker and different people who's told me about places because for whatever reason they couldn't go, or about a particular deer they couldn't go, so they told me. And so you do that for 30 years, and then all of a sudden you got this enormous network that you are gathering knowledge and information from. And then back to your answer, you got to have the means to be able to buy the fuel, buy the seed, buy the, whatever it is you need. And if you got to pay the landowner, you got to be able to afford to pay the landowner.
Sure.
And so now granted, for me, I hadn't had to spend near as much as people think I have. I've had to pass up on some opportunities that were outrageous.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I'm sure it's come across, especially if somebody knows who you are and knows what your game's about and what you're looking for. If they've got something that you want, I assume there's plenty of people who said, well, I'm going to leverage this thing to the moon.
Exactly. And I've had to pass up. I mean, and it was it's painful when it happens, because I've known if I had had the money, the kind of money it would have took to make, I would probably have 40 200s now, because there's probably been at least 20 that I just said, I can't pay that.
What's some of those extreme deals look like? Just curious.
We don't need an exact number, but what's the most you've ever paid for a 200 incher?
The most I've ever paid is 30 grand.
Yeah, and so that would be all combined. Like in your mind, you're like, to get access to this property, to like everything that goes into it. Yeah, 30 grand, which is honestly probably pretty reasonable.
Well, when I say that, I'm talking about that's usually to the landowner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do is I usually pay just an access, just so they know I'm serious. I'll give them something up front, and then the bulk though only comes when I kill the deer.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you pay them an access fee, and then essentially if you're successful in that, then there's Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
most of the time we have an agreement where I can pay that over like a year's period of time or something.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that helps me too.
What's the
And I've
most?
actually done that on big game hunts. Cause see, I buy and sell property. So I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, I got money one day and nothing the next, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we know how
And
that
so,
is.
yeah, so the timing's always not right. And I mean, I've done this on a couple of sheep hunts. I just said, hey, I can pay this much and then, this much at another time, but it's going to be after the hunt. You can hold on to the horns if you want to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they never have done that, but because here's another really, really important thing that I want to stress. When people find out you're an honorable person and that you do what you say you'll do, because everybody's going to make calls, they're going to vet you,
Mm-hmm.
and when they find out, if they make a call and they talk to somebody, because you rarely ever will run into anybody that you don't have a mutual acquaintance
Mm-hmm.
of some type. And they'll make a few calls and they find out that, if they say, yeah, man, whatever he says, you can count on it. Once you establish that reputation, it makes it actually gets easier.
Yeah.
It gets easier and easier because people, and of course, obviously the TV show helped a lot.
Sure.
I got a lot of access to a lot of opportunities of a lot of different species of animals around the world because of the hunting show. And of course, when I killed that deer, the big buck, and it was on Monster Buck 16, and everybody saw just the raw emotion and excitement, people just said, I want to hunt with that guy, or I want to, I
Mm-hmm.
want to, that's, that really is me. I mean, I'm that guy. If I hit the winning 3-pointer in the NCAA championship, I'm on crowd surf at the end.
Yeah.
My son, he'll walk off, he'll look at you and he'll go like this, and that's it.
Yeah. That's his
I'm gonna,
celebration.
yeah, we're gonna completely blow it up and that's the way. I mean, to me, killing a big buck is such a blessing that it deserves
Yeah.
a celebration. I
Yep.
mean, it's a gift from God, and it deserves the respect and the admiration and the gratitude and everything, the emotion and the crying, the tears. I've had some I don't even know. I just lose it. I'm an emotional person, so I'll just sit over one and weep,
Mm-hmm.
and because it's so special. And I guess, I hunted so hard so many years and growing up and hunting in Tennessee, and it's like hunting in PA. I mean, oh my gosh, you kill a 200 in Pennsylvania, you're gonna be like a legend of the state.
Absolutely.
And so, you work so hard for so long, and then when it happens, you're just like, it's so special that in my opinion, you can't even do it enough justice. You can't even celebrate enough to do
Yeah.
the blessing enough justice, other than just thanking God. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. I grew up in the church and just believe that, having a good faith and a strong faith is important in life to every facet, whether it's family or, and when I pray, I thank God for the opportunity to enjoy the outdoors and hunt and fish and experience things that I never thought in a million years I'd ever get to see. So, I just think that it all works hand in hand.
Yeah. Are you finding it now, Spook, just with like, again, the intel that people have with cameras, maybe even the competition, that it's even if you have the means, is it harder to get on these deer now?
No, not yet. I mean, there's more competition, so there are more guys out here trying to do it and throwing money at it. Which there again, you have to approach. You have to know how to approach the person in a respectful, humble manner. And I think that's where a lot of guys that have financial success maybe don't get the access that they could. I'm trying to put it as nice as I can.
No, we
No,
get
I
it.
get it. Yeah, they've never been told no because they have the money type of thing.
Does somebody come to mind, Jeremy?
and so sometimes their egos and arrogance and stuff gets in the way. And I just don't, that's just not the way I roll. I'd be afraid my mom would come out of her grave and whoop me with a switch if I was, not
Yeah, we're with
an
you.
honorable, respectful, humble person. And I just think that, and it's like I said, it goes back to your reputation.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to establish this reputation long enough. It's going to be hard for anybody to get in front of me on that part of it. Yeah. And nobody's really trying for the most part. I mean, you got, all the people that are killing big bucks like Josh and the Drury's and Lee and some that I probably can't, obviously I can't remember. They're pretty much focused on where they live.
Right.
Yeah.
They're pretty much, zoned in on one or two states.
Yep.
And that's understandable. But for me, I'm just like nationwide, continent wide, trying to find, and I really think I'm working on some business deals. And if I'm fortunate enough for them to come through, I think it's probably going to get worse in the future.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's a completely different game, right? You talk about Lee and Josh, and we, in a way, Josh is the one who is closest to us, and we'll talk about the different farms he has, and he's spreading his ability to have different deer herds that could potentially produce. He can pass a 180 here because he's going to spend his time at a 200 here.
Well, it's still a different thing, though. I mean, there are not a whole lot of guys, or at least we haven't talked to a whole lot of them. I wouldn't classify Lee or the Drury's or anybody the same way that I would with your approach.
Yeah, it's different. It's a completely different game.
That's kind of what I said earlier. It's very animal driven. We've talked to.
Adam Hayes.
Adam is for sure.
But he is still he's very Ohio focused.
He is, and it's okay. I mean, it's okay to have.
I think Don.
Yeah, I know Adam. I know Adam very well. I mean, Adam's mostly focused in Ohio and Kansas some.
Yep.
And so that's pretty much his gig. And so Adam's a good hunter, very intelligent. He and the Eskers used to be really, really good friends.
Yeah, Eskers, I for sure would be in there. Yep.
Yeah, the same area. The Eskers are in a complete different category too, because they're hunting strictly suburbia deer.
Yeah.
And they've got 80 properties that they're running cameras on. And of course, I feel sorry for them. They were just here. They stayed with me a couple of days this week. I feel really bad for them right now because EHD is pounding Columbus and Pittsburgh.
Is it really?
It's pounding. They're just getting crucified. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean we're bone dry in Ohio across the board, but
it's terrible. I texted a guy that I'm working with this morning. I'm like, dude, what's going on? He's like, well, nothing here yet. He's like, they're just praying that they can get through to the first frost, But I hate it for Scott and Steve because they've lost. I think they said 12 of their biggest bucks they had on camera are gone.
Really? Wow. That's to be honest, that's the only place that I know of that I've seen and chased the 200-inch deers in Columbus.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
Well, that's more bucks.
Yeah, that's where I was chasing the 225 that got killed in November. I was in Pickerington, and I didn't find out about it till after season.
I still don't know what happened to the one that I was hunting. I mean, he was probably 210, 215.
Yeah.
And I don't know. He was there for multiple years and then gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, there's so many people there.
Yeah.
It's just, a guy has a crossbow and he looks out in his backyard in December.
Yeah, done.
And they're feeding birds and turkeys, and there's a 200 in it, and he goes, digs it out of the garage and shoots him and takes it to the local taxidermist, and you don't ever hear about it.
You don't hear about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or it gets run over by a car and runs off in one of the rivers or something, and you don't, but So, and I mean, we all know there's a natural mortality on deer. And
They
that
die, period.
they just, they get punctured. Scott was after a really big buck a few years ago, and the deer just looked awesome all up until right before bow season opened. And then all of a sudden you could just tell the deer was sick. I mean, all of a sudden his hip bones were sticking out and it's like, what's going on? And then he just disappeared. And they know that he died. He spent hundreds of hours on foot looking for that deer and never could find it.
Wow.
Who were you thinking of?
I don't know. We talked to somebody recently that they're just like, wherever the animal's at, when I hear about it, I'll go.
Well, Lee from Atlanta is chasing.
Yeah, Lee Ellis.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's mostly chasing suburbia bucks.
Yep.
I've known Lee since he was 16 or 17 years old. Of course, he started out in Atlanta.
Yep.
And then he's skipping around. I actually sent him a text yesterday, but he's doing a good job at chasing good deer, and he's paying landowners to get access to their property, and that's great. It's great. He's obviously got the time. I don't even know what Lee does, but he has the time. And so,
I think this is what he does now.
Yeah, I think he does it full time.
Yeah. And so, he's doing a good job chasing big deer and getting access. And he's got, he's a good looking guy with articulate and nice. And, he's appealing to, I mean, shoot, he's come to Nashville and got permission not far from me.
I was going to say, yeah, he's done a lot up there now.
On some good deer. So, he's doing good. I don't really know. I mean, most of your TV hunters are killing some pretty good deer, but they feel the pressure to have to shoot a lesser deer to get the footage.
Yeah, they just want to fill an episode.
Yeah, they're just trying to get episodes, and so that's that makes it tough on them. I mean, I talked to Don and Candy about that. It was killing Don Kiske that they were having to shoot 4-year-olds because he said, "Oh my gosh, I'm just sick of it." He's like, "I'm ready to get back to trying to hunt, let those deer go and trying to hunt big ones again." And he said, he said it's just so hard when financially it just pays for us to have the footage, Yeah. And I get it. I totally get it. I totally understand. I got in a position when I was doing my show that I felt like that if I could show passing up a 150, 160, 170, 180, I'd make a show just out of that.
For sure.
Didn't feel like I had to kill one. And then if I could make the chase of a 200 into a 2, 3, or even 4 episode chain of events where you built up the anticipation to the big one, I always thought that I liked that,
Yeah.
And I thought that was more realistic than just showing a show where you shot a 200.
It is.
Yeah,
I mean, it is a pursuit.
I feel like you have to give that deer the credit of 1 or 2 times when you encountered the buck, but you didn't get a shot, or you saw him cross the bean field or whatever, and you just make a whole episode out of that, what you're doing and what you're doing to strategize to put yourself in a better position, and what are you doing, and how are you hunting out of a ground blind, tree stand, hay bale, whatever it is you're doing. And people seem to have really liked that.
Yeah. Have you run into, in these kind of pursuits in your network and stuff, I mean, have you had guys who were hunters who have had a buck like that on their property and say, "What's it worth to you, Spook, basically, to come shoot this?" Like, because I'm trying to put myself in the position. It's like, man, my dream is a 200-inch whitetail. So, like, there's no way I'm going to let anybody else hunt that 200-inch whitetail.
You guys will laugh. I mean, I messaged a guy 30 minutes before. He sent me a picture of a buck his neighbor had. His neighbor's a hunter. And I said, would he be interested in working out something? Is there a number that he'd be happy with to not kill that buck? And let me hunt him? He said, I doubt it, but I'll ask. I can't tell you how many times I've got that same response. I doubt it, but I will ask. And they said, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's for sale.
Yeah. Well, when a guy, thinks that he can get, $4,000 or $5,000 for something that he really actually doesn't even consider his,
Yeah.
realistically,
Yeah.
and what that can do for him in other ways and helping him in some situation that's more important than a deer,
Mm-hmm.
then you get it. I mean, I get it. And I don't have any less respect for that person. Most of the time, that person ends up helping me. And what I do is I said, listen, I would love for you to be involved in the experience.
Mm-hmm.
If I kill the deer, I'll call you. You can come, we'll get pictures made. I'll make you a part of the story. They actually love that part of it.
Yeah. Cause
And I think that's always been a big thing for me too, is people really appreciate, that's part of the humble side of it to
yeah.
me. If you give them some accolades and credit and attention for their part in it, I
Yeah.
tell you, it goes a long ways. It goes a lot further than people think.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think of like you said, you're paying for an access fee. So obviously, like right out of the gate, it's like it's not a guarantee.
Exactly.
You're
Yeah.
paying for access to hunt that deer. It's not a guarantee. I mean, what would you say your success rate is in a given year, just on average? Like, are you hunting
No.
5 different bucks and you kill 2, or are you hunting and paying for
Yeah. So
access more?
usually there's going to be 5 to 7 bucks that
Okay.
my hopes is, I mean, usually if I can kill 1, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm. So
If I
yeah.
kill two, I'm ecstatic.
Yep.
And if I kill 3 of them, I'm just like, I might as well quit hunting this year.
Yeah, so you're sub 50%. So you're
Yeah.
paying for
Oh, for
access
sure.
across the board with a
Yeah.
sub
Yeah.
50%.
You're more at, like, realistically, you're going to be at 20-25%.
And I would assume, and again, I don't want to know the actual financial. I'm just trying to tie this back to people listening to this. I would assume that your access fees are probably not that more extreme than what people are paying to lease a piece of property right now.
Oh, no. No, usually it's most of the time it's very fair. I've had a couple of deer that I gambled on really. I mean, and listen, I got an illness, so,
We do too. Don't worry.
it just is what it is. I got an illness. And so, I've had a couple bucks. I'm sitting there looking at one right now, and the guy wanted all his money up front. And I was just like, man. And I knew in my heart it was dumb, but I was attracted to the buck so much. And I actually thought this buck had a history in this area. And I was like, I really think I can kill this deer, And I ended up killing him. I feel like it was one of the best strategies. I think it was one of the best jobs that I ever did, really outthinking this deer. And I was, it was risky, but it worked, And I've only done that a couple of times, and it was way more stressful.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you're all in at that point.
Yeah, you're like all in. You've pushed everything to the middle.
Yeah.
And you're just like all in, and I didn't tell my wife about either one of them till afterwards.
Of course not.
Of course not. Yeah, we get that. Well, and I assume that changed probably the way you hunted that season, right? Because you had more of your chips on that deer. Like you kind of
it actually incentivized me not to be lazy on the deer.
Mm-hmm.
But it was it was an epic experience. I mean, the deer was on a 10th. We had this. I was in on the lease on the ranch. But basically what I paid for was exclusivity to that deer. So the other 3 people in the lease, that deer became off limits immediately to everybody but me. So that's what I was basically paying for.
Gotcha.
And Now, what that did was that paid the lease and the feed bill and the management fee for everybody for the year. So basically, I paid the yearly bill for everybody, but I got access to the one deer.
So
Which,
were you paying that technically to the landowner, or kind of paying that to the other guys on the lease?
well, the lead guy on the lease was a good friend of mine, and he, so it's kind of both. I give him the money, but he basically just paid the lease off, so it went to the landowner.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
And then and then the deer was, so I knew the places where the deer had been seen in a 2-year period. I knew where the bulk of the trail camera pictures came from. And what was funny is there was a farmhouse that we stayed in the corner of the farm. And most of the pictures and the sightings had been behind the house. Well, the problem is, you get there, you're opening and closing the door, you're turning the light on, you're talking outside, you're parking the truck, you're moving the truck, blah, blah, blah. Well, I told the guy that was helping us with running the cameras and doing everything. I was like, man, that deer knows when we're here. He's like, oh, I feel certain. I said, I got a plan. And he had set a stand up for me that was only good on a south wind, and I just didn't like it. And the only time when we ever had daylight pictures of the deer was after a front moved through on a north wind. And so I was like, man, we got to change the game. So what was funny is I was in Saskatchewan hunting, and I knew this was going to happen. The airplane lands in Saskatoon. Boom, I get 3 pictures. The deer shows up 3 times that day. A big front moved through, temperature dropped 30 degrees. He came in at 8:30, 12:30, and 4:30 that day. Next day, he comes in at 8:19, 12:20, and 5 o'clock. And I'm just like, oh, I was just dying. So I get home from Canada, and it's warmed back up. It's in the 80s. I go up there and I hunt a couple of evenings, and it's slow and not seeing much, but we did get a couple of pictures of him at night, so we knew he was close. So I went in there on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I knew there was a front moving through on Thanksgiving night. And normally I wouldn't be at home on Thanksgiving at that time, and I wouldn't have been this time had the weather timing been different. I put the ground blind up, brushed it in. I'm telling you, it was awesome. You couldn't tell anything. You couldn't see anything, which you have to do if you're going to be that aggressive. If you're going to set up a ground blind in your key spot during that time of year, you better do a good job of camoing the blind up, And then I took and raked out a path about 500 or 600 yards all the way to the house. And so we came home for Thanksgiving. I picked my cameraman back up at 4:30 off the side of the interstate on Thanksgiving afternoon. We drove all night back. And I told him, I said, we drove through the rain, temperature drops 30 degrees. I told him, I said, we're going to kill that deer tomorrow or Friday. Or I said, we're going to kill that deer on Friday or Saturday. He's like, you think so? I said, yeah. I said, everything, it's coming together. And I told him, I said, when we get to the house, we're going to park on the back side of the barn. I said, don't slam the door. Don't turn the outside lights on. No talking outside. We're going to carry our stuff in. Next morning, I said, we're going to get up. Same thing. Sneak out. We're going to sneak into the blind. No nothing. And so we did all that, got in the blind. And I mean, it's getting daylight. It's one of those crystal, beautiful north wind, 10 miles an hour, 25 degrees. You just feel it, I told him, I said, today's the day. I said, we're going to kill him today. And he did it was like 7:30, quarter late. He wanted to do a cutaway. I don't even remember what it was. And he had everything on, and I said something about what we were doing and what we had done the night before, driving in and all that stuff. And so I said, man, I'm going to lay my head back against the blind for a minute. I was just, hadn't had but a couple hours sleep, and I was kind of tired. And I laid my head back on the blind, and he hadn't even taken, he had his earbuds in, hadn't turned the mic off yet. He said, I hear something coming. Because he could hear the doe walking in the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
I leaned up and I looked, and here come a doe. And I looked up on the side of the hill, and he was walking down a pretty steep hill, and he had drop tines on both sides. And every time he'd take a step forward, it just dropped like that. Those drop tines were just working like this. Oh, it was magical, And I was like, here he comes, He walks right up there, and I shot him, put an arrow in him, and killed him. And it was just, it was just magical. And it was just, I just felt like we just did a really good job. There'd been several people that had tried to kill this deer, and they just were hunting in the wrong places and going about it the wrong way. And we just went to a pretty, what I felt like was simple, but yet a little bit risky, putting that ground blind in there. And, but it worked, And we had ozonics. I mean, I use ozonics when I'm in a ground blind, and it helps a lot. So.
Dang, man. That's wild. I guess, kind of going through the process, Spook, and stuff, like, and I don't know how many of them, because it sounds like you have a really good network, so I don't know how many are, like, leveraging other, but, I mean, have you, and I assume just by your style, I'm going to say you're not doing it, but have you gotten to, like, a bidding war with anybody? Like, have they tried to leverage, well, Spook said he'll pay this, and Joe Blow over here is going to pay this? I mean, have you...
I don't remember. It seems like that may have happened a couple of times. And what I do is I just cut it off at the bud.
Yep.
I just like, if you're gonna put me in some kind of bidding war against somebody else, I said, I'm not interested, because here's what you got to here, and here's what I leverage. I usually leverage, just like I did this velvet buck. I usually leverage my ability to one, kill the deer, and help the person in some way if needed. So a lot of times, the people who try that, what you're talking about, are usually outfitters.
Mm-hmm.
So they got somebody they know, they're going to call him and they say, hey, well, Spook said he'd give this, and blah, blah, blah. So what I tell them, I was like, listen, what do you want out of the deer? Are you just looking for money? Are you looking for PR along with the money? And is the person that's offering you this outrageous, is that person even capable of making it happen?
Mm-hmm.
So, because how many times have you heard of guys that are on a big deer and just, somehow completely screw it up?
Yeah, for sure.
And in my opinion, that happens more than the ones who are actually successful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've all messed him up unintentionally ourselves somehow, and a lot of times unknowingly. But unless you're, dotting every I and crossing every T, it's easy to be lazy and mess your whole opportunity up. And that's what I challenge anybody. If we get into some kind of little quote bidding war or whatever, one, I usually just choose not to participate. And two, I just try to appeal to their just common sense thinking, what are you looking for? And if it's strictly money and you want to gamble that guy's going to pay you double what I'm going to pay you, and you think he can actually make it happen, or you can help him make it happen, then that's fine.
Right.
Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And, but if that's not the case, if anything else goes into it, I usually end up being the one that gets the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I bet that throws people off a lot of times when you're like, well, do you think that guy can actually kill him? They're like, well, yeah, I think so. Like,
It makes them at least second guess it, their initial thinking around it.
Yeah. And a lot of times if it's an outfitter, he thinks that he can make it happen.
He's overconfident in his own skills.
But so many times, especially with a bow, what happens?
Dude's going to blow the shot.
he either misses it or he wounds it, and they never get it.
Yeah, that's it. He's
So
gonna blow a
you
shot.
got that's where you got. I got to say, hey, I totally get that. You know, the money's important to you. I get it. It's but can this person make it happen when the heart's beating, adrenaline's pumping? You know, is he going to make the right decision? Can he make the shot? Is he,
Yeah.
and because most, big part of the time, you think about it, the guy that's just throwing money at it, there's a good chance he's the guy that can't make it happen.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, I mean, sounds like you've got your ear to the ground on a lot of places for big deer. Out of coincidence, are you familiar with the CJ Alexander buck in Ohio?
Just a little bit, mainly from my Jurassic Classic buddy.
Yep.
I went blank on his name. The guy that ran Jurassic Classic for years in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've known him for a long time, and I ran into him at NWTF, and we got into a conversation about it. And so I just know I don't generally ever get caught up in the drama of the questionability of a particular buck, because I don't have time to
Sure.
worry about it, or I think that we live in an age where everybody's so eager to automatically jump to the fact that if you kill a big deer, you did something wrong, kind of thing. And so I just don't support that mentality at all. And then, but I know that there's when it comes down to money and a beautiful woman and a big buck, a man will do anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I totally get it. And you can be a great hunter and a good guy and make a mistake. We're humans and you make mistakes.
That buck wasn't on your radar, though.
What's that?
That buck wasn't on your radar, though, was it?
No, it wasn't. I didn't know anything about it. But I did, like I said, I heard about some of the controversy afterwards and had talked to him about it in NWTF and had heard, just that there was maybe some questionable things about it, but that's really all.
It's interesting because, we start talking about the sheer number of 200s at any given time in the United States, or even into, Alberta and Saskatchewan or Manitoba.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
We've talked about this before. We're like, how many do you think are out there walking? There's a lot.
A lot.
Well, let me explain. I can explain some of that.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Spartan Forge.
Dude, maps. Mapping, right?
Yeah.
It all starts with a map, a visualization of a new property, into the fine-tuning of different food plots, different habitat projects, where those are going to go, all the way to sharing pins and looking kind of like beyond the layers with something like LiDAR, which is exclusive to Spartan Forge as of now.
Yeah, and whether we're looking at it from a management side to put in food plots or switchgrass, or if we're taking a run and gun public approach on Kansas, it all starts with a map. It starts with a strategy there. You and I are going to have our own Blue Force team, which will allow us to run our own devices, but be able to see what you're adding or what I'm adding to that single map, which is really going to be critical moving forward this hunting season.
That's right. So if you're looking for a mapping software to try out this year, or maybe you're just like not getting what you need out of the one you're using currently, Bill's offered us a promo code of HUNTR20, HUNTR20, that you guys can use to get your own subscription up and rolling. Check out Spartan Forge, download the app, use that promo code, and we'll be using that this year.
Make sure you check out Spartan Forge.
Obviously, and with lack of another description, quality deer management is been in effect for several years, and there's a lot of people planting food plots and passing up deer, and so there's a lot of landowners managing property, so we get all that. Obviously, that contributes. But here's something that people don't realize. A couple of things that are really big that's been going on for a long time. So we all know there's more high fence operations in North America than there's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happens every time a hurricane, a tornado, a storm comes through across America happens?
Yeah. A fence goes down.
Absolutely.
T-Rex gets out.
Yeah.
What do you think happened in 2008 when the economy crashed
Yeah.
to guys who owned high fences
Yeah.
and couldn't afford to feed their deer?
Yeah. Just let them out. Open the gate.
They would keep their 1 or 2 best bucks and maybe 4 or 5 of their best genetic does, and they let the rest of them go.
Yeah.
What do you think happens every single year if a guy's got 50 does and they average 2 fawns apiece? What's he do with the doe fawns?
Yeah. He don't want them. He don't want to feed them. Don't want to rear them.
Once they get up big enough, he turns them out.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you that.
Yeah.
They either kill them or they turn them out.
Yeah.
This has been going on in a big scale for a long time.
Yep.
Why,
Yeah.
why wouldn't they just kill them? I mean, if that's the, you know what I mean? It's a farming operation, just like with cattle, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like,
But they've got too much of a
A
personal
lot
touch.
of people don't, I mean, and I totally get it. They don't have the heart to.
No.
They got kids or they got a wife or this or that, and they just,
Yeah. It's
this is not going to kill
It's
them.
not a slaughter facility. They're raising deer. I mean, most of those
doesn't
deer.
it seem risky, though? It seems less risky to just kill it and
What's
take care of
risky
it.
about it?
That people are going to find out that you're letting deer out into the wild. That seems risky to me.
I mean, it is to a point, but I think, you know, if you look at most of these deer farmers, they're bottle raising the fawns.
Okay.
Like, you know, I mean, hell, we had to do it in our research project. Like, there was a point there where all the female fawns, I had to put a bolt gun in the back of their head when I found them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like doing that,
Sure, of course.
but
Yeah, so it's all different. And you're talking about, you know, you're talking about just small, some of them are small mom and pop operations, and some of them are pretty, you know, and
Yeah,
pretty
big
And most of the
commercialized type
time, the
stuff.
bigger the operation, the less likely that they're letting them out.
Sure.
sure.
But everybody has, you know, and so I just personally, that I don't have anything to back this theory up other than I just know it's happening. I mean, how many times just in the last month have you seen a video of a deer somebody's video on a deer running down the side of the road?
It was
with a
all one
tag
in
and stuff?
Ohio. Yeah, just a couple
I've
weeks
seen
ago.
4 or 5 of them just in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I mean, there's
And you know that big giant Kansas buck that got killed a couple years ago? that
Oh,
was
yeah.
3 something.
3 something. Yeah.
Yeah, that deer he got out, he was, 50, 60 miles away.
Yeah.
And so that's just, you know, that stuff is happening all the time. And so we don't, and people didn't, you know, back in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, when things got so bad, you know, people were just trying to survive, you know.
Yep.
And so, and there was that happened a lot more than people realize. And so, you know, it just is what it is. And I love Ohio, but there's a lot of high fences in Ohio. And, you know, I know a lot of people that did that.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's
And I mean,
we probably
and
overlooked it for a long time.
I've got a couple of friends who had high fences in the past, but not anymore. And they just did it as a hobby, you know. But even they said that, you know, they would have a tree would blow down over the fence,
Mm-hmm.
and they might not find it for 2 weeks. They didn't run the fence every day or even every week, and they just didn't think of it. And sometimes it wouldn't even be a storm. It would just be a tree that fell, and they wouldn't even know about it. And they go, and there'd be a trail over the fence, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's just, and in Texas, oh my gosh, you get a tornado comes across Texas, and it could blow down 100 fences.
Yep.
And so it's just, I mean, I just personally think that has, you know, over a 20-year period has really, and, you know, added a lot of genetics to our deer herd as a whole in a lot of places. Now, it hasn't in Tennessee because we don't have any.
Yeah.
You can't move deer or raise deer or do anything here, so it doesn't.
Probably
You know,
has in
and-
Pennsylvania. I mean, I think we still have between 800 and 1,000 deer farms in the state of Pennsylvania. And I mean,
Wow.
we're producing
Yeah, that's great.
190 to 200 inch deer in Pennsylvania now. It's not because we got great soil everywhere.
That's
Yeah,
super
yeah.
interesting.
So I think that's part, you know, and I'm not complaining. I mean,
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Well, we had
But-
this discussion, Spook, because obviously the stuff going on in Oklahoma around CWD and them wanting to release captive deer with this, CWD resistant gene into there. It's like, well, number one, I think all of us are in favor. It's like, well, we don't want like mutant bucks out there. Like, I don't want to see like a pile of like 350-inch bucks running around like that. That's not normal. But
yeah, I don't think that's going to happen because I think being in the wild is so stressful
sure.
that it doesn't. I think if you got a buck that's got 300-inch genetics, what happens is he ends up mating, breeding a normal doe, and they end up with a 200-inch deer,
Sure.
Offspring. But I'm not saying it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I don't think it's going to be a lot,
Well, somebody told us the other day that the Beatty buck in Ohio was a high fence escapee.
Yep.
Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, that was Cody Idle told us that.
Yeah, because it was 3 something.
Yep.
I've heard that. I mean, so there you go. Ohio was the only place in North America that's got 3 confirmed legal wild 300+ inch bucks killed, know.
Well,
Yeah.
dude, it happens. Brian killed a high fence buck?
Did he?
Yeah. It was just a 140-inch 8-point. This is in Pennsylvania. This is just to paint a picture of like it's a small world just between the three of us. One of us knows the guy, at least one of us. Yeah, 140-inch 8-point got out of a guy's backyard, and it was like November.
Well,
5th.
that's the mom and pop
Brian
operation.
grunted him in and shot this thing, and he's like, for Pennsylvania, it's a great deer, big 140-inch 8-point. It's hanging in his garage, and
They have an ear tag?
no tag.
Interesting.
No tag, and he gets a call from his neighbor, and he's like, "Hey, just heads up, I got that deer got out there. And in case you see just like 140-inch, and he's like, well, I got one hanging here in my garage. He's like, you better come take a look. So he comes over, and I won't do the story justice, but he says he walks in and sees the deer, just like his head hits the floor. He's like, oh, that's and Brian didn't even want the deer, gave it back to him. And
well, think about even in a lot of the Midwest states and stuff when they started to do these big CWD implementations on them, and they were wiping out entire populations on a lot of these things. Like, there's probably guys that are like, I don't want anything to do with this, and gates open.
you're right, dude. I can only imagine how many thousands of deer have been let out of high fences into the wild.
Intentionally and unintentionally.
Yeah.
Because of weather and
Sure.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's both. It's both. It's been and I'm sure intentionally it's not near as much now as it was
Sure.
there when the economy crashed. But I do know that you've got some of these guys out here that are letting their doe fawn once they're just letting their doe fawns nurse up to a certain point. And then they're just cutting them out and cutting them outside the gate, and then they just go out into the wild.
Wow.
Be free.
What's that?
Just be
Just
free.
go free. We'll take him to like an institution or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the thing. If you know of a place that's done that and that's doing that, and you can get somewhere nearby,
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You may have a better chance at that
it
point.
ain't a coincidence that stuff's happening in that area.
How many of the giants? So Ohio would be one of the places that you're like, well, the soil is probably not as good as the Midwest,
Mhm.
and like just like historically, I don't think it's produced as many big deer as the Midwest.
It is now.
How much of that do you think is attributed to the number of deer farms that we have in Ohio?
I think that's what Ohio is the number one state I'm referring to in this.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Indiana
I
is as well.
think Ohio has good genetics
Mm-hmm.
because those deer that are coming out of around Columbus and Pickerington.
Yeah, giants.
I don't think those have any genetics of high fence deer, and there's some studs,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Ohio has good genetics. And then there's a lot of big, vast valleys that have tremendous soil types that grow corn and beans. And then they got those big hills that come off each side of them.
Yep.
So Ohio to me is kind of the perfect storm because there's a lot of really good cropland there. And then they have a lot of big hills and for deer to live and get older. And then you've got all the high fences there that deer have been getting out and turned loose over a period of time. And I mean, in my opinion, Ohio is killing the most like just giant thug deer than any other state.
We start to put that microscope up a little bit. And you've got Ohio, you've got Indiana. I mean, think of the Huff Buck, #2 world record typical.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of deer farming in Indiana.
I wonder if there's a way, like, and unfortunately, I guess the record book is probably less and less accurate every year.
Yeah, because people just aren't submitting them anymore.
I wonder if you could do, like, if you could run a study and look at where all the deer farms are at in Ohio or any given state and correlate it with, like, the big deer they're taking, if they're tied to those areas.
I mean, the Big Buck Club in Ohio that Mike Rex does probably is the closest one that they're still doing records with.
Interesting. I wonder if that's...
Well, I mean, we've had this discussion, and again, not to like just keep bringing it up, but like there are plenty of people saying that CJ's deer has some sort of high fence
it definitely
lineage.
does.
I mean, it looks like a dinosaur.
1,000% it does.
Like the skull is as big as a Brahma bull, and the rack itself weighs 12 pounds. Like it. Yeah. You know, I've worked in high fences throughout my entire college career, and even after that. And
that deer's
like,
not that far removed from a high fence.
Yeah,
I don't think it got out, but
it feels and looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's in that same area. Not, you know, it's all rumors, but there's rumors of other very large deer in that literally that same area.
Yeah.
So is that coincidence? No way, it's a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I mean, I think those genetics, especially in Ohio, have been introduced almost and spread statewide. And I think it already had good genetics. I think there's already, some good crops and soil types in a lot of the state. And I think that then with the implementation, just with the things we talked about, I just think it's kind of the perfect storm for Ohio. I just think that's why they have so many giants.
I mean, if you think about, I mean, obviously we've spent a lot of time here talking about 200-inch deer. Think about the rarity of what it would take to create 300-inch deer. And like Spook just said, 3 legally confirmed 300-inch deer in the state of Ohio just seems like.
I think you just answered it for us. We haven't covered this before, but that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hey, I mean, I love it. I love it. I mean, I've killed, a couple of giants in Ohio, and they definitely, to me, they just, especially one of them just has a look where you just feel like at some point, I mean, that deer's daddy was.
Yeah. He was behind the fence.
Yeah. You just, and I mean, I'm not
calling
too
shots from
proud to
behind the
admit
fence.
that I think that, and I think I just know it. I know it's happening, and
yeah. Which I think on the other side of it though, like go to Kansas, I would say Kansas is pretty pure minus a few areas maybe.
Yeah, I think Kansas is probably least affected, and Kansas is a unique state. A lot of Kansas, a lot of places I've hunted, the soil type, they might be, it's not all that great. I mean, it's pretty sandy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and you're like, how in the world are these deer? But, I think Kansas is one of those states that has seems like they have a lot of 170 to 210 kind of deer.
Yep.
Whereas Ohio's got more of those just, 220 to 300-inch deer,
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
So I don't know, but Kansas is my favorite state to hunt because the deer move so well in the daylight, and they're so visible.
Yeah.
They're just fun to hunt.
I just love that and I mean, again, it's getting changed in some areas. I just love the age structure in Kansas. It's one of the few places you could watch multiple bucks between 5 and 10 years old just do what bucks do.
Yeah. It's you get to see, I mean, if you got a place that's fixed up right, you get to see everything that a whitetail does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's everything. It's snort wheezing, it's breeding, it's lip curling, it's breeding, it's chasing, fighting. I mean, the best true encounters and most fun to watch deers almost always been in Kansas.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, Spook, not to like open wounds, but like a lot of people know your name from the Kansas buck that you killed, and then subsequently there was legal things that came into play from there. Just as a clean slate for us and the listeners, like give us the lowdown on what that. A lot of us have seen the video. So just give us the lowdown.
It's really simple. I mean, you know, it's very unfortunate, and to taint such an amazing deer, such an amazing hunt, be the best. It'll always go down as the best hunt of my life. And I'll never match it with any other experience, I don't think. But I'd been hunting Kansas for years. I loved it so much. I bought 2 pieces of property that were really close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
There was another property there. We had seen this buck, knew he was there. I was told that the landowner wouldn't let anybody hunt. He would never lease it, never sell it, never, won't, all negative. I took a contract and a check with me when I went to talk to him. And I told him, asked him if he would be interested in leasing, selling, whatever. And well, first of all, I talked to him for about 2 hours before I even brought it up, and let him get to know me because I was his neighbor, you know. And so I had a, you know, but he wasn't a hunter; he was a farmer, which was awesome. The farm that he had wasn't really that conducive to a good farm for a farmer. It was better deer place than it was for cattle or for raising crops, and I knew that. And I knew what he liked. And so I said, well, if you have any interest in this, here's a check and here's a contract to buy your property. You look at it. If you don't have any interest in either one of them, you tear the check up, tear the contract up, and we'll be friends. And, you know, if you ever change your mind, give me a call. And I knew immediately when he looked at it, he was going to take it. And he said, well, let me talk to my wife. And so the reason he didn't want to go ahead and sell the farm, and I told him, I said, you probably know this, you got a really big buck. I said, he's on me sometimes, he's on you sometimes. I'm sure he's on one of the other landowners or two sometimes. This buck was super aggressive. This is the best buck sign I ever hunted. I mean, he had rubbed trees this big, scrapes, just giant scrapes. It just stunk. I mean, it was the best buck sign I've ever hunted. And I told him, I said, I believe the deer is bedding on you most of the time in a big cedar thicket and then coming off on me to feed. And I said, I was kind of looking for a place to morning hunt, but I'd like to, you know, I'd love to buy it, but if you don't want to do that, I'll, you know, lease it. So what he wanted to do was do the lease, and then he did the contract to purchase, but he didn't want to close on it until he found a farm that he could 1031 his money into. So he was pretty intelligent. He knew
makes sense
about the 1031 process. So all made sense. So, okay, we had a deal. Awesome, you know. And so being a new landowner in Kansas, previous to that, as I'd mentioned before, it was always you bought a landowner voucher, and I'd always hunted with an outfitter, and he just, you know, I'd plan a hunt and he'd just get the voucher when he leased properties and wherever all he got them. You could buy the vouchers, a landowner could give them away. They were up to the landowner's discretion to do what they wanted to do with them.
Okay.
And so, so he always took care of getting my tag for me, obviously. So then when I bought land, I said, what I need to do now that I own land. He said, well, now that you own land, you can just buy your tag across the counter. Simple as that. I show up, I go to the Ampride gas station. I say, hey, I'm a landowner. I want a license. I'm here to deer hunt. Okay. And so we're getting our drinks and snacks and stuff, and we up the counter, and they give me my license, and I sign it. They stick it in a pouch and hand it to me, and that's it. So, trying to shorten up the story as much as possible. I killed the deer. I ended up, spotting, stalking the deer and killing him on the land that I had the contract on to purchase. And so it's all great. Shoot, if you was anywhere within 10 miles, you heard me screaming and hollering. And, it was on Monster Bucks. It aired, I don't know, probably 50 times on TV. #1 selling Monster Bucks video of all time, on the cover of North American Whitetail, blah, 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 And 4.5 years later, they charged me with the Lacey Act, just out of the blue. No, I didn't talk to anybody. Nobody asked me any questions. I didn't have any interview, nothing. I just get charged with the Lacey Act because obviously I brought the deer home. And they said, they were going to investigate it, blah, blah, blah. Well, it wasn't much to investigate. I didn't have anything to hide, I didn't think,
Right.
And so shortening up the story as much as possible, they finally said, because I had not yet closed on the property and not yet actually, I hadn't actively participated in the farming practices on the farm that I had the contract on, and I had it leased and a contract. Therefore, my tag was not valid for that piece of property. So they offered me a misdemeanor plea. I didn't want to take it because that's just not my style. I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. I obviously wasn't trying to hide anything. Everybody knew about the deer. I got a call from, back then I was hunting with Michael and Michael Waddell and a bunch of us, T-Bone, we all used to hunt up there at the same place together. Blake Shelton, everybody knew about the deer. Candy Kitsky called me that night or the next night and said, that's the biggest buck ever shot on video by a bow hunter. And I was like, I had no idea. And so at the time, Stan had the biggest one and it was at 220, I think, and this buck was 230. And so then the next day, David Blanton called. They're wanting to put the footage on Monster Bucks, and we ended up making a deal later on at ATA for that. And, they put it on TV, I put it on my show. It was just, it was awesome. It was awesome. And so, I have all these long talks with my family, my dad, my wife. I've got some buddies here that are attorneys. I talk to them, my attorney in Kansas City, and they're all like, man, just get it over with and just do it. And I was like, man, it's just not right. Meanwhile, I was having multiple conversations with Hank Parker and Ted Nugent and some people like that, because my attorney told me, he said, if I defend this in federal court, he said, I'm going to cost you between $250,000 and $350,000. And they were saying, I don't know if they could do this or not, but they were saying that I wouldn't be allowed to hunt until it went to court and it was over. Well, how do you think that made me feel?
Yeah.
And so I was like, and even right up until the last minute, in Kansas City to go in, I'd already said that I would take the plea to go in the courtroom. Well, so let me just, one other thing, I brought up Hank and Ted. They said that they would go to the hunting industry because they were so adamant about we need to do something to get this Lacey Act changed because it's being abused in America, because, they're using these little technicalities that really don't have anything to do with, the legality of the deer. You had your license, you killed the deer in the legal shooting time with a legal weapon on your property and all this stuff. It's just, you didn't sign your license, or you didn't punch your tag, or you didn't do, whatever it is, you didn't do something right. And then they use that technicality to, basically, in my opinion, to extort a fine out of it.
Because the Lacey Act originally was in place for basically trying to decommercialize game species and across state lines for profitability and stuff. It wasn't really anything to do from a average hunter aspect.
Oh, exactly. Originally, it really didn't even have anything to do with hunting.
Correct.
But it's so broad. I mean, you could go to a dove hunt in Kentucky across the state line and come back over to Clarksville and filling up with gas, and the game warden having to be there. And just so for whatever weird reason, you got one dove over the limit in the truck.
Yeah, you're a Lacey Act.
You're up for the Lacey Act. And so that's not what we all know it's not what the Lacey Act was designed for. And so we were working super, super hard to get that changed because, Don Jr. and Eric are both hunters. And so they were, they were trying to get the Lacey Act rewritten while Trump was in office. And they said, well, and Ted was working really hard on it because he's closer to them than, most of the rest of us. And they said they were going to do it second term. Well, of course, we all know what happened there. Mm-hmm. And so we're hoping that if, obviously we're all praying and everything we can do to hoping that he gets in this time. And then I think it'll get changed.
Interesting.
So, but anyways, I ended up taking the plea and, and so then.
What was the plea there, Spook? What did they basically say? This is what you got to do. Well, of course I don't even remember exactly what their wording was when they went public with it, but they try to make it sound like you did everything but slit your mom's throat, but so illegally harvesting a buck, blah, 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 trespassing. I don't know what all it was, but all it was just, I was in their mind, I was in possession of I was issued the wrong tag. Mm-hmm. And so that's what it all came down to is just obviously it was in season on property I had permission to be on. I had a tag, blah, blah, blah. They just said that. Now, my attorney said, listen, you've got a great case. He said, you've got, and every time I push back on any part of the plea bargain, they give in. They wanted me to give me a year's probation and miss the following deer season. I said, nope, not doing it. Mm-hmm. I said, tell them we'll go to court. They came back. Said, well, 6 months and you missed turkey season. I said, done. I don't care enough about turkey season to agree.
Care, I mean, I love turkey hunting, but don't get me wrong. Missing a turkey season was, and plus, my son was playing high school basketball, and I was way more interested in him than I mean, you guys. So you'll love this. I got to throw this in here because it's the only thing I've ever done that I love better than hunting is playing ball. Mm-hmm. So I love to play basketball and it's just like, I'm just like insanely passionate about sports, but especially basketball. So my son was playing high school ball and I was just like really we had spent a lot of time training him. I had buddies that played the NBA that trained Coleman. And so we were, I was really involved and engulfed in my son's basketball career. So, I was just like, let's just get it over with. And so, yeah, like I said, every time I push back on something, they would lessen what's that tell you?
Yeah, they don't have a case.
Yeah. And, but the not getting to hunt until it went to trial and then the money, which again, this was post 2008, business wasn't as good. Things weren't the same, and I don't mind saying, I'll just say it, I call it the years of Obamanism. And it was just, things just weren't as good financially during that time. I wasn't getting to do, a lot of the same things that I, had been used to beforehand. And because financially it was just a harder time. And so both my kids were in private Christian school. And so it's just, it was a time when you have to put other things in front of hunting. And, the family is obviously more important. And so, so I just decided to take the plea.
Mm-hmm.
I wished a million times that I hadn't have since then, but I took it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of like talking about, going all in and putting the money up front on a buck or something. It's like you could have went all in on that court case and paid the money and stuff. And man, at the end of the day, if they want to fine you on something, they might find you on something.
Exactly. And I really believe now that I've learned so much more about how things operate, I think that had I just taken that chance, I think that we would have settled on. But the problem is if you take any kind of plea whatsoever, they run with that. And,
Sure.
Guilty. He admitted he did this, admitted he did that. I didn't admit to nothing. I took it as a way just to get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
And, I admitted I killed a giant buck and y'all don't like it.
What was the tag that they issued you? Did they issue a landowner voucher?
So this was right when the transition went from they stopped doing landowner vouchers and they started doing a quote hunt your own land tag.
Oh, geez.
Which ignorance of the law is no excuse, but technically only limits you to the land that you own.
So even though you had a contract to purchase it, since you hadn't closed on it, you didn't own it.
So the argument was, and I was told by an older gentleman that I respected very much and who had lived there his whole life. He said, in Kansas, he said, now I can't tell you about other states. He said, in Kansas, once you sign, you put down money and you sign that contract. He said, technically in Kansas, now I didn't follow up with this because we never did actually, wasn't a need to, but he said, it's always been understood. He said, it's kind of like a cowboy law or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that once you have a contract with no contingencies and money's down, in the eyes of the law here in Kansas, you own the land.
Hmm.
He said, you can do whatever you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that was post this all happening, obviously, because obviously I didn't think, I had 2 great places to hunt that the buck was using.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. So I had 15 rubs as big as your leg and 20 scrapes around where my stand was at, and a big food plot and corn everywhere. And
yep.
Everything a deer could want. And it was awesome. The problem was it was more of when I say problem, it's the kind of place I didn't want to go into it in the mornings because I couldn't hardly get into it without messing it up. So it was mainly just an evening spot. So I was wanting to hunt this other place. And then when we got our agreement in place, it just so happened that the very first evening I went in there to set up a stand is the day that I saw him and was able to kill him. Mm-hmm. So, which was, the whole thing, and I've said, I've put it even on my own DVD, and I've done some other shows about it. And when I did my interview on it, I was standing by the deer, and he's right here, right here beside me. But I said, I know there's been some controversy and rumors and all kinds of stuff about this deer over the years, but I said, I'm as proud of him today as I was the day I killed him, and it'll always go down as the best hunt of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, they can, they can downplay it and make up all this stuff about it. And I've heard so many crazy rumors. It's been unbelievable. And I just laugh at them, how people can take a story and create.
Well, yeah, I've been in the industry. I'm 40. I've been in the industry since I was 24. I think.
Mm-hmm.
At one point in time, probably shortly after this happened, the one I heard third hand was Spook killed this in Kansas. He brought it back to Tennessee and tried to claim it as a Tennessee deer for a state record.
And you'll maybe appreciate it. Jeremy, that's what Jeremy told me.
Drop time buck back to Tennessee to claim it was a Tennessee buck.
That was the rumor, and it was like,
that's how it was painted in my mind. Maybe because of what you told me that, or I'd heard it elsewhere. I was like, oh yeah, here's what I thought.
Because then it was the Lacey Act, and I'm
like,
okay, well, that makes sense. Like that, he brought it to this state to try to, because
I thought that an outfitter lied to you and was like, hey, we're here, and you didn't even realize that you were like a mile across the state line and then shot it. That's what I thought.
See, I mean, that's the third hand stuff that's just like.
Yeah, it's been, that's two new ones on me there. So, it's been, one of those popular stories is I was just being my cameraman riding down the road and I saw it in a field and got out and shot it. And I'm like, so you think a 230 buck, 6-year-old deer is going to stand there and let me get out of the truck with a bow
and a cameraman?
I know. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just, and
wow, man.
So I have, but here's what I've been, anytime anybody's ever approached me about it, asked me about it, just like you guys here today, I have no problem telling the story.
I appreciate it, man. That was very clean, and yeah, it's a technicality. I mean,
I get it. You can see the disconnect is right there. It's like, hey, you understood that once you had a contract, you could hunt the property with that tag. That was your thought process on it. And the wardens or whoever was prosecuting you is saying that that's not the case. So pretty black and white.
Yeah. And see, another thing, here's another important factor that I brought up to everybody during the course of all that is, where does the quote farming practice start?
Yeah, what does that mean? That seems really subjective.
Yeah, exactly. Because I had multiple conversations, even the very first day, with the landowner about farming and the things I wanted to do, and ask him if he would help me. And I was like, here, I've done lots and lots of farming. I've been farming for deer since I was 13. So I know that's,
yeah.
I specialize in wildlife habitat management for deer and turkeys and so on and so forth. So that's just what I do. So I had multiple conversations. I moved some bales of hay, moved the tractor, do this, do that. So in my mind,
yeah,
where did you speculate on the fact that I hadn't, quote, participated in a farming practice yet? What does that mean? You see, that's what we think. We could have won those arguments in court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the risk.
The thing is just, I did, at that time in my life, with kids in school, playing ball, I was coaching, running businesses, trying to survive Obamanism, and all these things. It just, I felt like God was telling me just to get it over with, but, it's just, it's unfortunate that such a blessed event and,
sure,
the excitement and the joy and all the things and yes, I got a lot of attention for it. It basically catapulted. I had already been doing TV for 2 years, but I was getting ready to start my own show, and it just catapulted my life and career to a whole new level. And all of a sudden, had people coming up to me that, were just, celebrities and ball players and country music people that had seen the show, seen the kill, and thought it was the greatest hunt they'd ever seen. And they just wanted to talk to you about hunting. I'd sit and talk to Blake Shelton for hours. We didn't talk about country music. He wanted to talk about hunting.
Yeah.
And I talked to Chipper Jones for hours. Chipper didn't want to talk about baseball.
He wanted
to talk about hunting, And so, you just had, and plus I was in the land business. So I started Spook Nation as a business decision to help market my hunting properties.
Yep.
So, I'm hunting on properties that I'm buying and selling and so on and so forth. And so, to me, it was a good business plan. And then, of course, when 2008 hit,
yep,
it just changed a lot of the dynamics of all that. But anyways, it's, I tell you what they did. They built, all they did is pile up a bunch of firewood under my butt, because it just made me more determined to chase them harder.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Sever.
Well, one of the biggest things that we always talk about is what our arrow setups are. And this year we're shooting the Sever broadheads. I think we're both shooting the new 2-inch titanium broadhead. And so, we're huge proponents of expandables. And I know we've had this argument back and forth with people, but we're
right and you're wrong, and you just need to accept it.
We just want to have a giant wound that pumps out blood. That's the bottom line.
We build our arrow setups and shoot bows, to maximize penetration, and we shoot broadheads that are going to give us the best blood trails, the most hemorrhage possible. And so part of those setups is we're also shooting the Easton arrows here coming up pretty soon. So we've shot the Victory in the past, and there's all kind of great arrow shafts on the market, but we're looking for a whole system from broadhead to arrow components to the arrow shaft itself. And the more we look at some of these Easton shafts and the components that go with them, that setup's going to be really deadly for us.
Yeah, I'm actually using the Easton traditional axis right now in my traditional setups for both my recurve and my longbow. I've got a 100-grain brass insert on those, and then obviously I'm using a fixed blade broadhead on those specific shafts.
Right on.
So, but yeah, our goal is always to be shooting the best broadhead that we think is going to be the most lethal for our setups. We've done plenty of research. We believe in the Sever broadheads, and we hope you would check them out at Sever Broadheads as well. Well, I guess it's just the, we've heard several conversations like this, obviously, Josh Bomar being one of them, and there's certain things like, you said it took 4 years for them to put the charges on.
Oh, I know.
But what were you doing?
I was really close to that whole thing. I'm the one that got Josh and Sarah, their attorney.
Oh.
And so, I'm very close to, I knew about every bit of that as it was happening. Me and Josh had multiple conversations about it. My attorney was Josh's attorney. And, so, I helped him all I could with that. And, there again, it's just, I don't know. It's hard to talk about it without trying to be careful to feel like you're not saying too much. But I just feel like that the important things like catching people spotlighting and hunting out a season and the real, trespassing and things that are like the most important parts of what I feel like is their job has just been kind of put to the wayside. And now it's just like, let's watch social media. Let's listen to the podcast. Let's see if they say or post something that's questionable, and we can research it, and we can find a technicality here where we can go in and raid their house and see how much stuff we can get.
Yeah.
And instead of actually preservation of the resource and actually, I had a guy pull up in my driveway years ago, and I was shooting a show with Troy Gentry of Montgomery Gentry, and shot a turkey right out from in front of the camera, off the road, out of my driveway. And I couldn't get the game warden to come. We caught the guy, stopped him in my driveway. He threatened to run over us, everything. We finally got him stopped and got him out of the car. It wasn't a good situation, actually. It was kind of dangerous, to tell you the truth. It could have gotten out of hand. And I had my cameraman at the time was a 9-year Ranger sniper. So needless to say, we didn't have any problem handling the situation. But we couldn't even get the game warden to come out and take care of the deal. I had to get the county. 2 county police came out and actually took care of everything, and I took him to court, and won, of course. But yeah, it's just, and I can tell you, I can give you 20 stories like that, and of different things. But yet, if it's somebody high profile with a name, a history of success and whatever, that's a big, that's something that they look at the most. The more successful you are, the harder you're going to be watched and chased and targeted.
Sure.
Crazy.
Yeah. Almost makes you never want to shoot a giant deer. That's the sad thing about, your story there in Kansas. It's like, if that had been like a 180, it's like, no problem. That never would have been a deal.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. If it hadn't have been that particular deer and the attention it got on monster bucks and North American whitetail, and actually what my career did in between during that 1.5 period of time, it would have been nothing. But there was a two particular game wardens that had it out for me. They had a camo company here, and he asked me to be his partner and be part of it, and I couldn't be because I was contractually bound to a camo company and to Under Armour already, and I offered to help him, and I let him use my cameras and my computers, equipment, and stuff. But he was the one who basically started the whole thing, and
wow.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it was
a
all a
little
personal
personal vendetta that kicked it all down.
For sure. And so that's, I mean,
Oh, wait, that was the same warden involved with the Kansas incident?
yeah, it all started here. He went to a federal agent and yeah, it didn't start in Kansas. It started here.
Wow.
Wild.
Yep. But, my dad told me, I got real upset one time. My dad was a county commissioner, and he had won by the largest margin that anybody had ever won by in an election in the history of our county. And my dad was just a great person. You will not find a single human being that would say something bad about my dad. And he lost an election, barely lost, and I was just furious. I was 18 years old. I mean, I was ready to break somebody's nose. That guy had went around telling people that Daddy was for something that he wasn't. My dad worked every day at a sawmill. He didn't have time to go hang out at the coffee shops and campaign and stuff. He ran on who he was, his merit, his honor, and integrity and reputation. He didn't go out and talk to people. He didn't have to. Everybody already knew him. Well, this guy started a rumor that, he wanted to put a double the wheel tax on all the cars in the county. Well, so he lost the election. Well, I was furious, and Daddy's like, "What are you so mad about?" And I was like, "I just can't, if somebody goes out and tells lies like that, I mean, they need to have some consequences." And he's like, "Son, you got to realize that anytime you're doing anything over and above what the average person is doing, there's going to be a lot of jealousy and scrutiny, and you're going to become a target of certain things that's just what goes along with it." And I mean, this was in the 70s,
Yeah.
So, and I was just like, and that's pretty much the way it's been. I mean, you just, that's just the way it is in life. And like I said, when it comes down to a female, money, or a giant buck, it's horrible.
That'll be it.
Yeah.
And I mean, admittingly, it's really sad. I have this unexplainable passion for hunting that's only, certain ones of us know and experience, and the outdoors. And admittingly, they've taken a lot of the fun enjoyment out of it. I don't even bring my big racks home anymore. I leave them in the state where they're at, and I have replicas made, and that's what I have mounted and displayed until the 5 years is up, just so that in case some technicality.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just
That's insane.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the kind of incident that kind of, just freaks you out enough that you have to.
I'm telling you, if it's a 200-incher, I don't even bring it home anymore. Yep.
Crazy, man.
I know some other really high profile hunters that you guys know very well that's doing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, it's probably
actually that's where I got the idea.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, because then they can't nail you on it if you haven't taken it back. Wow.
Yep.
Dang, man. That's
crazy.
wild.
Crazy to have to go to that level to protect yourself from just, I mean, that's why we get so frustrated about just gray area in the law. I mean, you point to a few, like here in Pennsylvania, for instance, it's like there's no mention of drones, for instance, on the approved electronic device list that can be used in the act of hunting. And then so you have to look up the definition of hunting, and does that include, scouting and or recovery? And then, but guess what else is not on that list is trail cameras, right? And so you're like, okay, well, there's clearly a gray area here. And even the director of our game commission here is like, well, yeah, we know that's in there, but we don't really prosecute on it. And the underlying implication that we all understand is like, yeah, until you do, or until somebody kills a world record, or
well, it's a technicality.
Yeah,
it's
until
open.
you kill a net 215 typical, then all of a sudden, it's a problem.
Like, what happens if you're in Pennsylvania and you kill I know it's a stretch, but you kill a net 215 typical world record, and then they're like, well, you had cell cams on your property.
Yeah, not on the approved device list.
And you're like, well, yeah.
You can fight it. It's going to cost you $300,000 in court, or, your call. What do you think?
Yeah. I will admit the world record typical would be worth going to court over, though.
Yeah.
And hopefully you got the money to fight it.
We'll back you. We'll raise the money.
We'll raise it. Set up the old GoFundMe for it.
Yeah.
Hey, we'd be promoting that.
Yeah.
We'd be promoting that GoFundMe.
Wow, man. Well, listen, Spook, man, we appreciate you spending time with us. Awesome to get to know you here and have these conversations. And man, I can honestly say you're playing a different game, which is cool to hear. Like, it's, when we get into these conversations, we just love hearing people that are super passionate about deer hunting and going about it, and their lives revolve around it so much. And then, but we all kind of have different styles and how we go after it. And man, it's really cool to kind of hear about the way that you go after things. And honestly, I had no idea that you had 20 plus 200-inch deer. That's freaking mind blowing.
Well, not many people know. I don't like, since I stopped doing the show for a while because my dad got cancer, and, he was really sick, and then COVID hit, and then we built a new house. And so I thought that maybe after I got in the house, which we just got in this past spring, and I got kind of, everything kind of back to normal in life, if there is such a thing, I'd probably start doing YouTube or do something in the future, just because I have so much footage. And, I don't, like I said, I don't publicize how many I've got or anything like that. I've never even entered a whitetail in the record books because that's not why I hunt. Mm-hmm. People's like, oh, you should do this. Even the Eskers try to get me to enter my deer. And I was like, I just don't want it to come across that that's the reason why I hunt.
Yeah, I have no desire for that.
I just enjoy the pure passion as you guys do. Just seeing the buck that you're chasing coming towards you is priceless. Mm-hmm. Drawing, when you decide to draw and you touch that trigger, is priceless. When you hear that slice, it's priceless. When you see him go down or walk up to him, it's priceless. When you pull up to your buddy's house or your wife or your dad or your kids or whoever, it's priceless. When your friends walk into the trophy room, it's priceless, so you just, that's why I do it. I love strategizing. I love manipulating the deer with the food plots and the, all the different things. And so, I just don't enter them.
Yeah. No, I get it, man. Yeah. I think the hardest thing for, even when we're trying to get conceptualize like what's out there, what people are doing, it's like there is no system for it anymore, right? Like there is no, let me look at the record books and see where, because most of us just don't care about that. Like we're just not going to do it.
That Boone and Crockett has become pretty much, hardly anybody even, I don't even around people that even talk about it anymore. No. I know of dozens and hundreds of bucks that would qualify, people that have bucks that qualify for Boone and Crockett, they don't put them in.
Yeah. I think the only one would be like, if you've got a chance to dethrone the king, you go after it. But other than that.
And that's been my lifelong goal. I've always believed that at some point in my life, I'm going to kill the world record typical.
Do you think you've chased them yet?
I've known about two of them. One of them, it's a long story. He was in Alberta, and something happened, and I wasn't able to go after him, and he basically disappeared.
Mm.
A buddy of mine killed the deer that was running with him, which was a 250 non-typical. Then the other one was, I had an opportunity and I couldn't afford it. The guy put a price on it and I couldn't afford it, and he killed it, and it's hanging in his house and nobody even knows about it.
Whoa. What was the price he put on it?
I'd rather not say,
Okay.
but in today's world, I mean, if it happened today, I'd have 10 buddies I'd go to if I had to borrow the money to do it. But that's been about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And it was during Obamanism.
And so he killed it, and it's on his wall.
And that is
You
think that is?
He didn't even take it to a taxidermist. He went to an estate sale and bought a really nice mount and took the stitches out and put it on himself. It's hanging on his wall.
And you think that's the world record typical?
Oh, I know it is. He wouldn't tell me the score, but I mean, I looked at it immediately. I knew it was, and it's a 6x6. And I was like, I said, man, that deer's got like, he's got to have 12, 13-inch brow tines. She's like, yeah, there's 12 and a half. And I was like, man, we just talked. I was like, man, it's awesome deer. I know you had to be excited when you walked up. I said, man, those G2s and 3s must be 16, 17. Oh, yeah, they're 16, 5/8. I got every measurement by the end of the conversation.
Yeah, so you could do the math.
And the deer's well over 220 net.
Can you tell us the state of that one?
I'm not. I can't. He would kill me if he knew I got
mean,
that.
How crazy is that? I mean, because we speculate a lot. Like,
I would guess.
I'll just say this: it's in obviously in a state that we would all not be surprised and that we've talked about.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that when you start to speculate about it, it's like, I believe, and you've confirmed now, that the world record bucks have been killed. It's just nobody scored.
Well, I heard you guys in a podcast just in one of your shows just recently say something about it, just what you just said, and I started laughing. I started to comment, and I said, "No, I'm not going to comment." So,
well, that's cool. I mean, to any of us like that are just like ate up with it, it's like you always wonder. It's like maybe. I'm sure somewhere right now there's another world record typical walking right now. And it's maybe.
So to add to that story, so I found out about another one. There's not many people that I would, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to anybody, but there's not many people. If you told me that you saw a world record buck, I would believe you guys, but I mean, there's just not a lot of people you would believe that knows what a world record typical even looks like.
Sure.
They would see a 200-inch typical and they would say, "Oh, that's the world record."
Yeah.
I've had people send me pictures of deer. They said, "Oh, this is a potential world record." And I can look at it literally in 1 second and say, "No, it's not."
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's, and so, but this one guy said, "Listen, I'm telling you, Spook, this deer this was in Canada, and this has just been in the last 3 years." And literally, I'm calling him to get the exact dates, and I'm going to spend the whole month of November in Alberta after this deer. I'm trying to make plane reservations, and he calls me. I texted him about when he wanted me to fly in. He said, "We've got a problem," and he called me, and somebody, we don't know who, had shot a cow off of the farmer's property. And he said, "I'm shutting down." He said, "Nobody's hunting."
Oh.
So we didn't even get to hunt the deer. Then last year, same guy in Canada saw another deer in another spot. He said, "I looked at him through the spotting scope for about 60 seconds at 300 yards. He said, "The deer is," he said, "right at it." I said, "Well, I'm going to write down." And I knew his mentality is to be conservative. So I said, "I'm going to write down what you think conservative measurements are." And he said, "I'm telling you, he's perfect." He said, I'm going to sit here and say he doesn't have 3 inches of deductions. And he called it off, and we had him at 221 net, you know. That was just last year, and I was building the house. He put cameras up. We never got a picture. He never saw him again, but he does a lot of taking hunters in other places for other animals. And he didn't put the time in there. And we had planned on trying to make a go of it this year, and hopefully we still can. But and there's some places in Canada that are still untapped, and we have made plans to hunt these areas. They got to be hunted a certain way because it's very difficult to access it from a road or by foot. And so you have to get in there other ways. And we've made plans to do that. And we feel like we're going to have some opportunities at some giant bucks in the next 20 years, mule deer and whitetail. So yeah, I still believe that I can make it happen. Just because about every 5 years, I've had an opportunity that I've known about one that we are pretty sure would make it. Here's another thing. I know of another buck that was killed that had the rack. He grew a world record typical rack. And when the guy walked up to him, he broke his G2 off.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So I know about, and this guy is kind of retired, semi-retired from hunting. He's killed a lot of big bucks, and I think, he will help me in the future if he finds one. I think, we can make it happen. But yeah, I mean, how many people have already had like 4 bucks that they know of that were world record typicals how many people even know about one that would have been the world record?
No, none. They say they do, but they don't.
Yeah. No, it's and so, because there's so many things. I mean, we know there's been giant bucks killed, but they had a common base point or the deducted out or whatever. And so, I killed a buck 2 years ago that I thought was going to be a new world record, but I passed him up and killed him the next year, and he was he's a 7x9, so he's not even.
So you got deductions right away on that.
Yeah. So he just ducks out, but he is a just tank, and maybe sometime we can do a whitetail cribs and
yeah, man.
So and if y'all stay on for a minute, I'll walk you around the trophy room.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Cool, man.
Yeah, it's like I said, I try to hit my mentality is you own land in key spots and you fix it up and you try to raise 200s, and then you also try to network across the country and get opportunities at other places, so you're maximizing your options. Yeah. And I don't think anybody's really doing it to that extent.
I don't think so. It's the first time like breaking down the process that I've ever heard anybody describe it in that broad spectrum network.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I mean, that's what you would do. Well, and one of the reasons it's so intriguing is like it's not what we're doing, right? Like, we hear about big deer all the time. Like, we have guys on the podcast or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, I got a giant over here and that," and like this is kind of like what I was telling you earlier. It's like, don't be offended by this because it's a different thing. Like when I hear that, I'm kind of just like, cool, great, that's good for those guys, that are hunting it. Mm-hmm. Like what you're doing is a different thing almost, and that like your pursuit is very driven by and I've said it a few times, like it's animal driven. You're like, man, that's a trophy. I don't care where he's at or any of the circumstance. I'm gonna do what I can to go on that. Not to say you don't care. I mean, obviously you're seeing which one of those are gonna line up in your favor.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm
And I
like,
mean, you can. I mean, I get pictures of them. I mean, I've gotten pictures, and I've chased some that we never saw, never showed up. I mean, I was hunting a 200-inch typical in Ohio last year. Deer was very killable. Oh my gosh, I would have. There's no doubt I would have killed this deer, and I'm just sick even talking about it. And there was a neighbor. Actually, I could see the street light from my stand. Convicted felon. He was known poacher. Had probably 200 racks in his barn. But he shot the deer one night out of his yard under the street light, and he left it laying on his porch. The guy that was helping me with the whole thing saw it, and this is kind of how dumb he was. He left the rack laying on his porch for a couple of weeks. Game warden rode by one day and saw it, and they got a search warrant, raided him, and found weapons in his house. And he had the rack, admitted to shooting it out of his yard and with a gun, and went back to prison over it.
huh.
Idiot.
Wow.
And I had that deer. I didn't find out about the deer or get access to it. If I'd have had, he came in 3 times on the harvest moon in the middle of October, and I didn't find out about him until about that time. And by the time I talked to the guy who had him on camera and we got it all worked out, I went up there immediately, got set up. Great setup. We had pictures of the deer. The last picture we got of him was on October 26th. I went up there I believe I went the day after my birthday and hunted him on like November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, something like that. No pictures, no nothing. I think the guy killed him right around Halloween.
Wow.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is there's a deer that is just should be praised to no end, and it'll just be asterisked and put under the rug.
Yeah, he was a 5x6, just a gorgeous, big barrel deer, just beautiful. And but yeah, I mean, just stuff happens. I mean, every year it's a different story. I could sit here and tell you stories till tomorrow morning about bucks that we didn't get, that somebody else killed or they disappeared or whatever. But that's just the world of hunting any buck.
Yep. Deer just
All
die.
of us have had. It could be a 140 that you were just chasing like he was a 240, and he disappears and you never saw him again. You don't know what happened.
Those are the worst ones, man, that just disappear, and you've got I'd rather know somebody shot it or whatever than have the story basically open-ended.
They haunt you.
I was actually trying to get Grant at one time to come do some just be a part of a research study. I wanted to dart some deer, some bucks in some of my spots and radio collar them. I just was dying to know where they were going because I'd have a deer. I can sit here and tell you about 10 deer that were potential world record class typicals that I passed up, and they were like 190 at even 4 and 5 years old. And I thought they were going to be, a world record type deer the next year and never see them again. And I know nobody killed them or you would hear about it.
You would think so.
Well, I knew too many people in most of these areas that even if some guy had killed it at night, they would have got out, because these guys, they get to drinking and carrying on. They can't keep their mouth shut.
Right. They wide open it.
Yeah. And so it just, and I mean, deer that I had a 6x6 on one of my Kentucky farms one time that was just gorgeous. And I passed him up 4 or 5 times and saw him the last week of bow season in January, and saw him even into February, just on the farm working, and never saw him the next year. Never saw him again. Just sickening. So I'm just for learning, I just like to know where they go. Where does that deer go? If you see him all a hunting season and then you never see him again, where is he? What happened to him?
I think some of those deer shed out, and whether they had like a brain abscess or whatever, they lay down and die as a shed buck, and
You'd never know.
You just
We've
wouldn't
all,
know.
we've all
I think,
thought that.
I think
though.
that's
Yeah.
I think there's some natural mortality like that I think there's more than we even realize.
Yeah.
I think so too. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think like these deer are just trying to survive and breed, and man, in some of these places, like you've been through like a rough winter in Kansas and stuff. That shit's rough. That's not an easy time to live through. You know, it's brutal on these deer. You know, or you get
you watch two bucks have a serious fight, and you're just like,
Yeah.
holy crap!
Yeah.
How in the world do they even make it to 3?
exactly.
I think that does a lot of them in. I think they get they get poked in the guts or you know,
crack their skull and get bacteria in. That's that brain abscess that forms. It's a big one.
I've probably seen 20 bucks in my life that had an eye poked out and just stuff running down the side of their face.
Yeah.
And, you know, just, I mean, I've seen them with tumor. I killed a 9.5-year-old call buck one time in Kentucky, had a big old tumor hanging off his belly, and it looked just like a Brahma bull.
Oh, yeah.
Just swaying, you know. And so, yeah, that's a million things can happen to them. But that's what makes when you get one so much more special. All the things that we've talked about today, hunters, mortality, vehicles run over a lot of deer that hit them and they don't even know they killed them, you know, or the deer might even live a few days. But you know, it's just hard out there in the wild, the weather, you know, just everything, them fighting each other. It's just disease, you know, ticks, you know, everything. And so, yeah, it's a wonder we have any that make it to 5.
Yeah, right. Crazy, man.
You're absolutely right.
Well, cool. Well, Spook, we appreciate you coming on. I guess for anyone listening, man, is there you've got YouTube channels now? Where would people find your content?
Really, the only thing I've got, I've still got shows on Hunt Channel Mobile.
Okay.
You can go to your app store. It's free. Just download Hunt Channel Mobile, and you can scroll down to Spook Nation. I haven't done anything at all in quite a long time. I want to get restarted. You know, like I said, my dad got sick, and then COVID, and then we built a new house, and so for the last 6 or 7 years, I've just been, just had other things. Yep. The hunting industry's changed so much, and admittingly, I'm not very techie. I'm the older generation, and so about the only thing I have a computer for is to put my SD card in and look at trail camera pictures.
Yeah, I get you, man.
So I gotta.
They send them to your phone now.
Yeah. That's why I haven't used my computer in 2 years. But I now just use it to store pictures and videos and stuff. But I mean, like that deer right there, to my knowledge, is currently the largest buck ever shot on video in the wild, and I got phenomenal footage right over the shoulder with a bow, and nobody's ever even seen it.
Dang, man. I think the world would want to see it.
Well, we're gonna get to it. We're gonna get to it.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, we appreciate it, and we appreciate you spending some time with us, and we'll definitely have to make sure we catch up, man. And stick around here for a second, and we'll wrap up.
All right, thanks.
See you, Spook.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Quest Hunt Co.
Man, it seems like as technology and social media and stuff just gets incorporated into our daily lives in the deer season more and more, it's like we're always looking for ways to just dial it back, spend more quality time with deer hunters, and really make deer hunting and deer camps great again.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all been part of that annual buck pull, whether it's at your camp or the local fire department, and we're trying to bring that feeling back with Quest Hunt Co. to be able to compete against other people in your state, but also be part of a national competition.
You can sign up in as many states as you want to enter deer that at the end are going to get scored, and you have an opportunity to win some big prizes. And there's an in-person banquet in February that Jeremy and I are going to be at where those prizes are going to get held out. I think we're going to do some sort of live podcast or speaking. We'll figure that out. But just looking forward to spending time with people who sign up for the tournament.
Yeah, so you can go to Quest Hunt Co. and sign up. Use the code HUNTR15 at checkout. They'll save you a little bit of money, and then hopefully we'll be able to see you in Missouri in February of 25 at the annual convention.
To make this season a quest.
Pretty freaking wild.
That's a lot of bucks.
I'd say, yeah, it's a whole different game. We were kind of talking there off pod of like, I don't know how I feel about it. Like, it's cool.
It's a different thing. I can certainly appreciate it.
I mean, it is a, I'm trying to think, like, there are things in life that I'm trying to relate it to. It's like, it's almost like prospecting in like the 1800s. Like you found a gold claim and like you heard about it, you went to it to try to like solidify the gold claim for yourself.
Yeah.
And obviously gold, limited resource, 200-inch bucks, limited resource.
Treasure hunting in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, very much like treasure hunting. Like finding, like looking for these rare relics essentially. And it obviously if you're like, man, I just want to kill, and we kind of had this talk with Andre, which was, he kind of wasn't for it. It's like, if you want to go kill the world record typical, that's what you got to do. You have to have a network of people across the whitetail range who are eyes and ears for you, because you yourself can't do it. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
If you want it, if you're at that level, if you just want to kill big bucks, like, you may work really hard on your property for a long time, and maybe one every 3 or 5 years you have like a giant buck, but you're not going to have a world record buck. Right. It's just
the odds are not in your favor.
You're a needle in the haystack, essentially. You have to look at the entire haystack to find the needle.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a different game, and I figured, from an industry standpoint, like there are a lot of people playing that game. There's probably more than we realize playing that game. You mentioned a few, but it's
maybe
that.
Well, I guess what I would say is like, there's no judgment at it at all. Like I think it's cool.
I think it's cool. Yeah, it's kind of cool in that, like, first of all, I'm not financially well off to do it, but like,
well, that's one element of it for sure.
It's
not the only element. I don't want to chalk it up to like, oh, these guys just have money, so they're killing.
No.
You, in a lot of cases, I mean, and he's telling us, you do have to pay your way sometimes, pay the landowner.
Well, you got to be charismatic. They have to like you to be able to do it.
You have to, and I mean, clearly he's a phenomenal networker. Just to be able to build relationships, and you're not going to just waltz in and slap your cash on the table and expect it to happen. Like,
well, you also have to be a pretty good hunter. Like, once you pay for that access, you best get it done, or like that money's gone.
That's right.
And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, and maybe this wasn't the way it was 10 years ago, but like, let's even take, I think he said his highest year to access and kill the buck was $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shit, we just have had conversations with people who are paying $30,000+ for a lease for 1 year, and there's no 200-inch deer on it.
Right. Yeah, and you would argue, someone could argue those people are idiots, or like, what are or whatever, whatever your argument would be, So I think, and the reason I say, like, no offense, is like, it's very interesting to hear that, and obviously we've been aware that people are doing that. I have no interest. Like myself personally, I'm like, boy, I'm glad that's not my thing. It's cool. It's fun to watch those guys and be like, dude, that's amazing. Like, you can track these deer down and know about, and that's awesome. It's super cool. And the reason it's so interesting is because, like, we the three of us sitting here, we're like, we love deer hunting so much but for different reasons.
Reasons.
My feeling towards that would be like, I just don't feel like I would have an attachment to those deer. You know what I mean? It's like if somebody sent me a picture of like a giant, and they have, they're not that they want me to come kill it or whatever, but they're like, here's this giant deer, and I'm just like, cool. Yeah, that's an awesome giant deer. Like, are you going to get on it? Or like, my feeling has not ever been like, how can I get on that deer?
Well, it's the same reason. Like, I have zero knock against, well, maybe not zero. Some outfitters I have a knock against, but most outfitters
I do for sure.
I don't have a knock against, but I don't have a desire to go hunt with an outfitter because I like putting in the legwork, and maybe I don't have near as big a deer to kill, but like, I'm doing it for a different reason. Like, whatever, if I end up killing that deer on my property that I put my work in, or on the mountain where I'm up there, walking 2 miles into one spot to try to find a mature buck, like that's the accomplishment I'm looking for. And sure, I want to kill the biggest buck possible, but only if it has those other tangible meanings tied to it.
Yeah, and that's what builds meaning for us. And I mean, I guess that's why, I say it's there's no offense or no judgment. Is that like,
it's just a completely different thing.
Spook and these guys are clearly putting in a lot of work to do that. It's just more on like the networking front, on the fact finding, the lead sorting, type of a process.
I mean, you can't kill him if he's not there.
Yeah, for sure.
We can all wish and hope till we're blue in the face, but odds are we're not going to have a 200-inch deer to hunt this year.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
So like you got to go find them.
And that's what's like I'm taking it in and trying to like understand how I feel about it. It's like it's interesting because it's like even as we're talking, I'm like, okay, I know about there's no 230s or anything, but I know about a 180 like that is on a piece of property that I have access to, and like
I mean there are 200-inch deer around our Illinois piece, maybe not like right next door, but they're there.
And so what's interesting is I'm just even in hearing that I'm just like, cool, if they're on my property, like I'll be interested in hunting them. But the fact that they're not, like I really have no interest. Even that 180 that like may or may not have moved off, like I haven't put in the work to go chase him to where he is. I'm like, okay, well I'm gonna work with
that's an interesting point because like I was trying to think of it. It's like, okay, like let's say hypothetically you or I have a 200-inch deer, but even on an Illinois farm.
Think about it this way, dude. What if Spook paid your neighbor $30,000 to come in and shoot a deer that was crossing in between? That would piss you off.
Sure.
It would piss me off too.
Sure.
Yeah.
And he would get it. He would understand.
He would, absolutely. Yeah. He's a totally reasonable dude. He would understand. But that's what he's doing, and it's totally his prerogative to do as well as these other guys that are doing it.
And it's public resource.
It is,
so
absolutely.
Do what you...
And you, like you're saying earlier, somebody could say the same thing about leasing a piece of property. Well, you're paying a hunt here, and that's where we kind of chimed earlier. And I was like, well, it's more of a cherry pick. It's not that you're cherry picking, but it's more of that than if you just pay for access, not knowing what's there,
not knowing what's on there and stuff. But I mean, think about.
But wouldn't you want to know something's there, right?
Well, I was gonna say,
so think about a weird line that
think about most of your lease listings or even your land listings when you buy a piece of property.
You want to know what's there.
They have deer. It's trail camera pictures and harvest data. Like they're building that in there. So yeah, it's such a weird. Yeah, I don't mind, and I understand the paying for access. I mean, shit. If I knew there was a couple 200s in an area of Columbus, Ohio, which I'm sure there are, although EHD that makes me nervous, and somebody said, "Hey, I've got 20 acres." You pay me $5,000 and you can hunt my 20 acres. If I think it's the right 20 acres, I don't give a shit if it's not 2,000 acres. If it's the right 20, I'll pay you $5,000.
Sure.
That's leasing the property.
Sure.
Right? It's in the perspective of Columbus, 20 acres is 2,000 acres in other places. So yeah, I'll pay your $5,000. Now, to pay you X thousands over that if I kill one of them, that's not my style.
Well, like from a morality standpoint, I don't feel like any of it's like.
It's no morality. No. There's nothing wrong with it. It's there is some capitalism in there, which I mean,
definitely.
I'm not.
Well, and I would say you and I are opposed to like you hear about like, and we don't know the dude, so again, there's no judgment. But he's talking about like the dude from Yeti or whatever. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Probably could be an amazing hunter. Could like absolutely love it. But like generally speaking, you and I see guys with money killing giant deer, and we're like, there's they bought another one. And
which to a point is not false, right? I mean,
correct.
It's not like they're out just buying. Different than, and I'm not defending Josh here. Maybe I am. So Josh, take it with a grain of salt if you're listening at this point. Like different than Bomar, who maybe is spending a lot of money, but he's buying his own farms and he's managing he doesn't know that there's a 200 there this year. Yeah. He just is hoping that he can grow a 200. That's a completely different.
And respectable wants to come to my mount, but it's not. It's more just relatable.
It's more relatable
to me.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like, okay, I can understand why you're so obsessed with those deer in that sense.
I can buy a farm, I can pass them, I can grow them to whatever their peak potential is. Yeah. That's relatable to anybody who wants to own land. I mean, hell, even if you lease land, that's to a point that's relatable. Different than I'm here doing work and somebody calls me and says there's
got one up here,
a 200 incher in Oklahoma. You want crack at it? And it's like, yes.
It's a weird predicament to find yourself in.
Spook isn't the first time we've heard of this happening.
Yeah, of course.
It's been more from the grapevine of people.
Well, and it's been slimier the way that I have heard it. Like Spook has, I think, gone about it in a fairly transparent and like honorable way.
I think he's got a great process there.
Yeah, and he's winning based off of his just his reputation and the fact that he's done people right, and he's not like hiding the fact about like, hey, this is what I'm after. And so
I'd love to get an Andre DeQuista's take on that, because his goal is to kill the world record typical.
Yeah,
that's Andre's goal.
Yeah,
it seems like Spook's process is the best way to achieve that goal.
It does. Well, in fairness, like, and in hindsight, it's like, okay, Andre, so like, what are you doing to achieve that? Like, you're just hunting here, basically.
Yeah, wishing and hoping that you grow one.
And that's not, like, obviously not out of disrespect. I don't know. Like, maybe he is, like, got his ears open, or like maybe he's been on a few of them, so he's...
I mean, it seems like between there and in Illinois, that's like the only places he's hunting.
And
like,
there's been some freaking mega giants. But yeah, like you're saying, needle and haystack, the odds of them being on that property.
You need to examine the whole haystack.
Yeah. Spook's doing it right, obviously. I mean, he's got...
That's how you get it.
Double the amount of 200s of anybody I've ever heard.
I had no idea. That's that's unbelievable. I mean,
and that's how you do it. That's how you do it. You would buy it and own, lease, have access to properties in as many big buck areas as you can, and then also on top of that, be networking like a madman and have the money to be able to pay access when one of those pops up. That's what you would do. That's what you would do.
Wow. Yeah, it makes you wonder. I mean, especially it's like, it makes you wonder. Like to your point, it's like, well, do you worry? Like, if I have a 200 inch on my property, do I have to worry about that? Like, is somebody calling? Maybe not Spook, but like people like Spook or other people to say, hey, got a beat on 200 here. You want to come kill them? And not saying my property.
I don't think it's that you have to worry about it, but like there's people that would pay to come shoot it for sure.
Interesting.
And that's just, Do
you think cell cams has opened that up even more?
You love tying it back to the cell cam.
Just there.
What, in what way? What do you mean?
Well, just again.
Well, sure. People might know about them more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, before you think about it, it was like you described the Alberta guys. Like, I'm glassing this buck right now. Like, that's it. That there were no, very rarely were there pictures.
What's a cell camera and all of Alberta going to do? It's just, I don't think it's as effective in that vast of country.
Correct. But in Ohio, on a corn pile.
Yeah.
Very effective.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, you guys are going to get pictures of them. Sure, maybe more known about. The deer pen, like the herd, whatever.
Yeah.
Conversation was really interesting. And funny that it's just really never come up to that extent. It's like, yeah, of course, there's thousands of, if not dozens of thousands of deer that have gotten out of pens.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about like the high fence hunting areas that are hundreds or thousands of acres high fence. Like, it's a different ballgame when you're talking about the 5 acre pen out back. But when you're talking about the hundreds of acres that are used in a shooting preserve standpoint and a tree falls on that fence, that person's not looking every day.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, and from a CWD standpoint, that's kind of eye-opening as well.
Well, the unintentional, like, I get that. The intentional of like, I'm kicking out all these doe fawns after they're done weaning. Yeah, that's wild. And that for sure is happening the more that he talked about it.
Yeah, and it's understandable. Like, I get not wanting to kill an animal unnecessarily.
Yeah, but at that point, like per our conversation with Seabury and stuff, like the purist mindset is completely out of the realm for almost every state.
Yeah. I would love to know. That's what I was saying earlier about like this, to know how many of the, like, what percentage of deer genetics has been influenced or population has been influenced by at one point or another high fence deer. Probably.
Well, I assume it's super
a good
hard,
portion of it.
Because again, a lot of these states are managed by the Department of Ag, not the like actual DNR or Game and Fish or whatever. And so it's two different organizations. Like, one organization is managing them as they're in the pen. The moment they get out of the pen, the other organization is in charge of them.
It is kind of funny, like, to consider that purity conversation. Like, I don't know how much I really care. Like, again, it's not so much.
I do to a point.
I do to a point. Yeah.
My only thing, and again, it's beating the dead horse, is I just want big bucks to be cool. Like,
Yeah.
And I think even Spook, who's killed 20 plus 200s, like if he sees a 200-inch typical, he is ate up about it. Like it is a cool thing. But like to the general public, and I mean, it doesn't pain me. Like I'm sure the kid's ecstatic, but like it for sure makes me twitch in my seat, hearing an 11-year-old kill a 268-inch deer.
Check
I'm
this
just
out.
like,
I thought Spook made some fair points there. The first and the third, notably, were he can't appreciate it, which is undoubtedly true. To it's full of. I'm not saying he doesn't appreciate it, but I'm just saying, how could you at a young age? How could any of us at that young of an age understood?
You can't.
What it takes.
You haven't been doing it long enough
to produce
you don't know.
a deer like that, But the third one was,
that he's not going to want to hunt anymore.
He's not going to want to hunt anymore, and I think that the two, frankly, cancel each other out. Because I think, like, in the same way he can't fully understand what he has there,
he doesn't really know what he did.
Really know what he did either. So, like, I don't know if it's going to have a long-term effect. That may be a part of him getting excited about hunting.
But is he always chasing it?
I don't think so, because I don't think he understands what he has.
Eventually, he'll realize.
Eventually, he will, but like maybe by then he'll also appreciate. Maybe by then he'll appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's hard because I mean it's in the same breath. It's I don't care.
I think they cancel each other out.
I don't care if it's a 268-inch deer or a 68-inch deer. It's like if the kid goes out and every time he goes out he kills one, like eventually he doesn't want to do that anymore because it's just easy.
Yeah, but dude, I mean, I killed a 170-inch deer. That's the biggest one I've ever killed, and like I don't have any feeling like the next one's got to be bigger.
No,
I don't have that feeling.
That's because you had 15 years of struggles to get there.
Sure. Well, and it's because I'm appreciating, like, I think the most valuable parts of the experience. Do I want to kill one bigger than that? Yeah, sure. I would love to, and I think it will happen. It's well within the realm of possibility. But I, like, in the same breath of, I'm telling you about this 180 on this property I have, and I'm like, dude, there's another like 145-inch 8-point that I would be probably just as jacked to shoot. Like,
yeah, it's just different how you're appreciating it at this point. But I would say, when did you kill that booner? 4 years ago? 3 years ago?
3-4 years ago, yeah.
At that same time frame, I don't think you would have looked at that 145 the same you look at it now.
Probably.
You've evolved as a hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And he might too. That kid might very well evolve and be ate up with it, and
yeah, I mean, dude, that kid when he's my age would look back and be like, "Yeah, dude, I don't know. I was just I was a freak. I was a kid. Like, who knows? Like, that'll never happen again. But it did happen, and it's cool that it happened. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'm not gonna fault the kid for shooting it, nor are you.
No. Didn't put my ass.
Nor is it like a for sure of how it's going to impact his hunting career. Like who knows?
Yeah, we don't know.
Who knows? Things like that happen. Yeah.
It is just yeah, it just makes you wonder when you know this other game that we just learned about is being played every season out there.
Yeah.
And because it's just like, there's plenty of people listening to this that will never see a 200-inch deer in their life. Never. It just won't happen. Besides like online or whatever. Like in person, they'll never see a 200-inch deer. And it's, you listen to this and you're like, I understand why now. Like, unless I'm the lucky one in that area, like there's a gate to get through to get to them.
Oh, yeah. Well, anytime you have a valuable thing like that, and there's like a method to getting it, people will optimize a process for getting it. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned with gold mining, treasure hunting, like, whatever it is, there's smart people that figure out how do I afford this? How do I fund this operation? Do I bring investors? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do I network to the point where, and how do you build a whole system here to optimize it? And it's not like always dirty. Like I really genuinely, I can appreciate his approach to it. I don't have any problem with what Spook is doing.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a different game.
Are there guys that are doing it greasier than that? I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure. It's like there's a pay to play game when it comes to yeah.
Well, I mean, no offense to anyone. The greasiest of the game is I'm gonna pay you $100,000 to kill a 400-inch deer in a 2-acre high fence.
Yeah, well, I mean that's like that. Well, then but if you're saying about claiming that's a low fence deer. Like
it's not even. It doesn't even matter. Beyond it's they just think they're the best deer.
That's a different thing.
They're the best deer hunter because they killed the
well,
biggest
and
deer.
let them think that. They are. You guys are. You're awesome. You know.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's a different thing. But
You're awesome.
I don't know. I think that
it is I know it's a different game. I'm trying not to put those in the same bucket.
It's a different resource
I think
altogether.
people will immediately hear what Spook's saying and say, well, they might as well be hunting in a high fence, paying $30,000 to kill this deer.
No, not the same thing.
I know, but I'm just saying that's the argument you're going to hear on this.
These are fair chase animals. You know what I mean? Just because
it's not a guarantee.
Just because you know where one's at and you can pay to get on the property doesn't mean you're going to kill it. It certainly helps your eyes. You know, I mean, but you're definitely not going to kill them if they're not there, like as the baseline. But if you can get on the property, you have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You have a chance. So it's a very interesting conversation, and I certainly hope that Spook won't be.
No, I think
he'll be. I think really understanding of this post conversation.
I think he was super honest about it. Yeah, it's a game. Like I feel like we assumed or thought that it was being played. It's being played. It's happening.
Oh yeah,
it's happening out there.
Yeah,
a lot.
The head hunting.
It's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, cool, man. Cool discussion. Glad Spook was on there, and cool to hear kind of his side of the story on the whole Kansas deer too. After a lot of speculations around that, but yeah, interesting. But I mean, there you go. Love it or hate it. That dude's probably killed more 200s than almost anyone living right now.
May ever kill.
Free range
Potentially.
200s. Free range 200s at that.
Yeah.
So yeah, love it or hate it. There it is.
There it
Spook
is.
Spann.
That's how you do it.
Born on frickin' Halloween. Spooky as hell. So, yeah, we appreciate you listening to episode 206, HUNTR Podcast with Spook Spann, and we'll catch y'all next week.
Later.
Take me